Chapter 1. Alexis's scream cut through the sound of honking cars and panicked, swerving traffic as she saw Jack's body roll across the road, leaving a crimson trail between it and the front of the blood-stained white truck that had stopped too late. Jack lay limp and broken, his eyes staring down into the street gutter next to him, his own rust-colored liquid beginning to flow into it from the pool that had built around him. Everything in view began to blur into color and noise as he heard the desperate cries of Alexis. "Jack! Just hang on! Jack! Please!" The last thing Jack felt was the pressure of Alexis's hands against his body. She was pressing so hard, but he was so tired. Sleep took him swiftly in that final moment. Michael was in his living room, a cluttered little apartment downtown. Sure, but there were worse places to live, though it might be a bit tidier if he could stop tearing things apart with his screwdriver and leaving the remnants about. His friends were starting to call it his rat hole, and maybe they had a point. Michael looked down at his countertop at the old console laid across it and pried open. The hard cider bottle in his hand came back up to his lips with a generous gulp. It was adequate at best. He had to stop letting Jack talk him into buying this garbage. Setting the bottle back down on the counter, Michael leaned back into his project, and back to work he went. It wasn't anything too difficult, just replacing some simple parts and modding the thing so that it could play games from any region. Michael had wanted to do this for years, but now that he actually had his hands on it, he was thrilled beyond words. Alexis was going to flip out when she saw he got a copy of that weird Japanese game she used to rave about playing when she was staying out there with her dad. It was a childish game about painting with all the colors of the rainbow and the magic of friendship. But hey, he liked isekai shonen slop, so who was he to judge anyone? With a satisfying click of the case and a few screws tightened, Michael's new toy was ready to taste the electricity of his apartment and purr. The TV lit up with a colorful game and blaring music. It worked like a charm as he scrolled through the menu and managed to find his way into the story mode to continue to test it, paying little attention to the game, just trying to make sure it worked for tonight when Alexis and Jack came to hang out. Absent-mindedly, Michael scrolled his phone, a bit of social media on his day off. It couldn't hurt. His eyes locked on a fresh post, only an hour ago. It was Olivia. They hadn't talked in a few years, but he still saw her photographs on her page. They were pretty good. Honestly, if she hadn't been so anxious all the time, he might have considered dating her longer. They didn't have any bad blood, just a little messy. As a fellow artist, he could understand her, though. Olivia probably would never see his tinkering for the art it was. Sometimes people really underestimated the creativity that came with technology. The screen of his phone jumped to the call symbol with Alexis's name in bold. It was a bit early, but maybe they needed to mess with the plans for tonight. Hopefully, she didn't want to reschedule. Michael was really looking forward to this. Michael answered the phone with a hopeful, happy tone. "Hey, Alexis, what's up? Everything okay?" "Michael, if you're not sitting, you should go and sit down." Her voice told him more than words could. Everything was not okay. Michael sat up on the couch and scooted back a bit to steel himself against the cushions. "What's going on?" The words didn't make any sense. He was sure he heard Alexis correctly, but it just didn't add up. How could Jack be dead? They had plans tonight, and yesterday he was laughing and making stupid, inappropriate jokes as they talked about what dumb shows they were watching online. How could Alexis even speak right now, if that was true? Her and Jack were closer than any two people he knew. The thought snapped him back to reality, and he spoke quickly and to the point. "Where are you at right now? I can—" Alexis's voice cut him off, quite a bit softer than usual. "I'm at the hospital with his parents right now. I can come see you in a few hours." "Right, yeah." That makes sense. He said the words even though he didn't believe anything made sense right now. The call hung up, and Michael set his phone down on the coffee table in front of him. His hand was shaking as he let go of the device. It shivered over to the bottle of hard cider and brought it back to his lips again. Jack's favorite horrible drink. It went down a bit rough as some spilled down Michael's chin. Tears of pain and frustration formed in his eyes as the taste of the drink brought back so many memories all at once. Michael got up and turned the modded console off, rubbing at his face as he paced around his cluttered apartment. He sipped the drink almost anxiously over and over again until he finished the bottle and set it on the counter, just staring at it with a detached sense of confusion. After an hour of sipping down a few more bottles of the hard cider, Michael's disheveled, shaggy brown hair was sticking in different directions from getting swept away from his stormy blue eyes. Tears still streaked around his cheeks as he sat slumped over on his kitchen counter, the same one he had just been working so excitedly at, his screwdriver staring back at him as he rolled it back and forth lazily by its handle. Maybe things would start to make sense again once he was able to see Alexis, to talk with her. As his thoughts surrounded the idea, desperate to not be alone anymore, an orange light flickered above him, the sound like sizzling bacon in a pan filling his rat hole. Michael leaned up with a startle. Was that a fire? His right hand gripped the handle of the screwdriver as his other hand accidentally slapped an empty bottle off the table, the harsh sound of glass breaking mixing into the already unpleasant air of the room. The glow above Michael was an orb of orange light. It hovered down to rest a few feet from his face, shimmering and seeming to pulse with energy as it formed into the shape of a sharp, toothy grin. The hair on Michael's body stood on end as the toothy grin, made of what seemed to be orange neon light, began to speak. It wasn't a random voice. It was Jack's voice, unmistakably. "Hello, friends. It's your close buddy, Jack here. I wanted to let you all know that I am alive and well. If you want to see me, just head on outside. I'll be waiting for you." Just as quickly as the impossible sight came, the light burst into little flecks of glowing orange confetti and faded back into the nothingness they had been birthed from. Michael slowly looked around his apartment from his stool at the counter. How many drinks had he guzzled down? Someone had to have spiked them with something harder than that cider. He felt the hair sticking up on the back of his neck with his free hand and realized his other hand was still gripping his screwdriver with white knuckles. Michael's gaze floated over to the glass doors that let him see outside from his ground-floor apartment. The sun was setting, and the sky was a dark blue. Really dark, as if an invisible storm was raging, but only the color was bleeding through. The baffled Michael minded the glass on the floor as he stumbled over to the clear doors, pulling the long hanging blinds over them all the way open so he could get a better look outside. Strange, luminous shapes were appearing in the sky. They looked like hexagons. Michael opened one of the sliding glass doors and stepped outside with nothing but his pajamas, a black hoodie, and his tightly gripped screwdriver that he couldn't seem to put down. Michael looked up into the sky, following the strange forming hexagonal patterns that seemed to glow with neon light, just as the mouth in his rat hole had. Before Michael could think to question the strange patterns further, pillars made of pure light began descending from the sky, full-on Greek-style columns, with the hexagonal patterns shining through parts of them as they elongated toward the ground, one after another hitting down in random parts of the city. Michael wasn't sure how fast they were moving, but it all felt like the world was in slow motion around him. What sounded like a loud crash of thunder boomed across the city as a third strange thing appeared in the sky. A man, floating down from behind the clouds with an orange glow about him, arms spread out in greeting as his form was revealed. The details were hard to make out from how small he was so high in the sky, but his amazing physique was clear. He looked like a glowing god. Michael's mouth hung open in shock as he looked up at the man. Jack? As the thought slipped through his mind, a light swelled around Michael's feet, and he felt himself get lifted into the air weightlessly as another massive pillar of light engulfed him. Michael kicked his legs and frantically looked about the city as he rose higher and higher into the air, starting to yell out in confused terror. He counted the pillars he could see. There were 9, maybe 10 pillars of light. His eyes met the figure descending down closer to him, as he could see other bodies floating up through each of the other columns. Stone from the earth began to wrap around and snake up the pillars of light as if to solidify them into being from the ground up. The figure was muscled and barely wearing any clothes, just a tattered dark gray cloak around his shoulders and some kind of loincloth of similar quality flapping around his waist. He could see Jack's wild mane of black hair spilling around the figure like a lion's mane. But the face, well, the face was hiding behind a dark orange mask that seemed to conceal almost the whole head. A sharp grin of crimson teeth spread into an unnaturally wide ear-to-ear smile on the mask. A thin X-shape looked almost carved into the mask where eyes and a nose would be. A lantern-like light ignited underneath, shining through in what felt like an intense gaze. Michael felt his stomach doing flips inside him as it was all too much to process. Then the wicked crimson grin cracked open like a working mouth. Not a painted mask, the smile never dropping as Jack's voice, clear as day, carried over miles and miles of city perfectly. Oh boy, it has been a minute, everybody. I am so excited to see you all again. I hope you guys don't mind a bit of a trip. I think today is gonna be a fun one. The words washed over Michael as stone encased him inside the pillar. An orange light all around him seemed to grow brighter by the second until it blinded his senses. He looked up just in time to see the last of the night sky's stars being covered from his view. Michael shouted up through the pillar, begging God to let him wake up back in his rat hole, back in the safety of his cluttered apartment. Everything around him had begun to feel hot as the orange light engulfed every part of him. Maybe this was all just a nightmare. Maybe he would wake up on his couch with a few too many hard ciders on his coffee table. Michael opened his eyes. Chapter 2. The sun was blinding as Michael blinked over and over again, his head swimming as he looked around in a daze. 11 people stood around the gorgeous fountain sticking up in the center of the medieval town square. 10 on the ground, in various states of standing and laying around, confused, while Jack stood at the very top of the fountain, his toes barely touching the tip of it, as his arms were spread out in an inviting manner. Michael's eyes finally settled up on his close friend in the creepy orange mask, half naked and faintly glowing like the star on a Christmas tree. Michael's head turned to look at the others circling the stone fountain. They weren't strangers. He knew every single one of them. Alexis was helping Olivia to her feet, her frizzy purple hair a mess around her face, as Alexis spoke softly, asking if she was okay. On the other end, Michael saw the familiar and ridiculous blue mohawk sticking up off of Dez's head as he helped his girlfriend to her feet. What was her name again, Maddie? Jack's booming voice washed over them all before Michael's mind was allowed to wander too far. Hello, everybody. It is so nice to see you all again. Ethan was a guy with a similar build to Michael. He had been making sure Isabella was okay when Jack's voice startled him. He had been a close friend of Jack and Michael's all the way back in middle school, but they had sort of grown apart by the end of high school. Back then, his brown hair had always been shaggy over his face, but now it was shorter and spiked up, allowing everyone to see the terror in his eyes as he stepped toward the fountain and shouted up at Jack. "What the hell is going on? What is this, Jack? None of this makes any sense. Am I dreaming? Am I drugged?" His voice began to shake as his tone of accusation turned toward one of confusion, speaking to himself as much as he spoke to Jack, who had the crimson grin plastered on his mask, the visual increasingly unsettling as it opened like a real mouth to speak again. "Calm down, Ethan. I've brought you all here, and I will explain why. Just listen. I promise you won't be disappointed." Emily, Ryan, and Daniel were grouped up on the other end of the fountain. Ryan had his hands on Emily's shoulders and was talking to her quickly, but her eyes looked distant. Daniel took a step forward. He looked like the blonde hunk of every girl's dreams. Michael had never cared much for the guy, but maybe that was just the jealousy from being around him too much back when they worked together at that game shop. Daniel's voice shot out from behind Jack, causing the mask to turn back and look at him. "Where is here? This looks like a town pulled straight out of World of Warcraft. This was the wonderful kingdom of Azure. Isn't it beautiful? I liberated this place from the demon lord Baal almost 60 years ago, and it's known peace ever since." Michael could barely take in the words at first, his eyes shifting past the people as he began to search the town square around him. But there was no sign of life anywhere. It looked lived in, but besides them, where were the people? Jack continued through the stunned silence. "I've been here a very long time. I was so excited when I realized how slow time was moving for you guys. Let me tell you, gathering every last god relic really opened up a world of opportunities for me, and now for you all as well." Daniel shook his head as if trying to rearrange his own brain. "God relics. 60 years. This must be real. I know I'm awake already, but are you saying this isn't Earth?" "Exactly. I knew I could count on that big noodle of yours, Daniel. Ooh, I still need to work on my phrasing." Jack hummed to himself for a moment before adding, "This planet is called Resia. I was transported here by a god after I died on Earth to save this planet from destruction." It was at this point that everyone began speaking louder and murmuring amongst themselves. Michael made his way toward Alexis and Olivia slowly as Jack looked around and tried to get everyone's attention back on him. Daniel called up to him. "You died. Wait, a god? Isn't there only one god?" Jack waved an annoyed hand behind him at Daniel as he said, Nah, all that religion shit is probably bullshit unless this guy has a wild sense of humor. Hang on, guys. Can you all pay attention? I gotta explain some real serious stuff here." Daniel tried to keep questioning Jack, but he was ignored, as Jack grew more and more frustrated with the bunch of his old peers. "Everyone shut up." Jack's voice boomed so loud the fountain shook like it might crumble with another word. Everyone's eyes locked back on the mask, the crimson teeth still spread out in a wide grin, like it was the only shape they knew. Good. Okay, listen carefully, everybody. I've called you all here because I think the people upstairs, these gods, he did finger quotes, are full of shit bastards. I think they like to toy with people like us. So I want to kill them. But I want help. So I've devised a little game for you all in order to find out who can help me. Ethan stepped closer to the fountain, gripping the rim of it. "You want help?" He paused for a moment. "Killing gods?" His grip tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Yeah, exactly. All I need you all to do is learn how to use the powers I've instilled in you and prove to me that you're up to the task. Easy peasy." Ethan's voice shook a bit. "Easy peasy?" The unease among everyone rapidly grew with each word out of Jack's mouth. "Yeah, you'll all duke it out with your new powers. Then, when there's only one or two of you left that have really proven you're capable, we can get to work on a plan to go against heaven." Ethan's voice came out in an annoyed tremble. "Go against heaven? Duke it out? Are you fucking crazy, Jack? What are you even asking us to do? Kill each other in some magical la-la land?" Jack dismissively waved his hand at Ethan's comments and the other voices rising higher to ask similar questions. "You know what they say, Ethan. Gotta crack a few eggs or whatever. I will not kill anyone for some dumb game, you pumpkin-headed freak." Ethan's shaking scream ripped through the voices of everyone else just as Jack jumped down to land beside him, a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone listen up. I am serious about all this, and I want to make that as clear as I can." Jack whipped his hand off of Ethan's shoulder, holding his arm out away from him in a straight stance, his fingers all together like a blade. It all happened so fast, the only thing Michael saw was a short flash of silver light. Ethan stood in a cold sweat, his hands slowly reaching up to touch his face as his head fell forward, and his body fell back. It didn't make any sense. How was that even possible? Michael watched Ethan's body slump backwards as it hit the ground, blood gushing out and pooling against the stone tiles around the fountain, as Ethan held his own head in his hands, resting upon his lap and staring lifelessly at the others. "So do we all understand listening and paying attention now?" Jack almost sounded cheery as he looked across everyone's faces, suddenly frozen in fear, everyone looking between him and Ethan's fresh corpse. "Good. Then listen up. In Resia, everyone is born with what they call a tool. These are basically magic items that are connected to your soul. They take years to form and master, and they hold special abilities usually tied to what they are, and the personality of their owner. I've given you all a very big head start with one of my many tools, so you should all be physically attuned with them at a fairly high level now." Michael kept feeling like he was seeing something in the corner of his vision, but it was always in the same spot when he tried to look at it, as if it were forever just out of view. He was trying not to focus too hard on it, but Jack noticed his head turning a few times and jutted out a finger toward him with a happy and familiar tone. "Michael, did you already find the menu icon? I bet you did. You're a smart cookie too. But don't try to look at it, dumbass. It's magic. It's a part of your soul now. Just think about the icon, and it'll open." Michael gulped softly as he tried to keep his cool. He stopped trying to look at it, and instead focused on the idea of the symbol in the corner of his vision. He tried to open it, and suddenly a grayish box full of text options appeared right in front of him. He could vaguely see through it. From top to bottom, the text options read Tool, Inventory, and Inbox. This was magic? It looked more like a half-baked RPG game's interface. Jack continued. "Everyone getting acquainted with the menu? It's all pretty straightforward. I took the liberty of adding you all to each other's inboxes, so you will be able to message each other during the game. This next thing is actually a little spell from one of my god relics. Watch this." Jack raised his hand, no one daring to interrupt him anymore with Ethan's body still on full display. Michael saw a black bar appear at the top of his vision. It kind of looked like the compass from Skyrim. Jack spoke right after it appeared. "I've watered it down for the game. In order to keep the game running smoothly, I'll have a target assigned to each of you. Once you take them out, you'll receive a new target. This compass will show you what direction that target is from your current location. Pretty cool, right?" Michael thought about closing the menu, and it did. Jack spread his arms out again and gestured to every one of his unwilling participants. "Now that we all understand the basics, I'm going to transport you all to random locations around the kingdom. and in the connected forest. Remember, everyone, take this seriously and don't hold back. If I think you're trying to stop the game, I just might—" He paused and stepped aside, gesturing down to Ethan's body. "Interfere." An orange glow began at everyone's feet, the same hue that had warped them from Earth to here. Alexis went to take a step forward but stopped as Jack aggressively held his hand out toward her. "Careful, babe. You'll want to stay inside that ring till it's done. We don't need any teleportation mishaps." Alexis shuddered at what that could mean, keeping inside the circle. At best, she only managed to say, "Jack, can't we just talk? We can still—" She was cut off by the orange light bursting up like the pillars had earlier. Everyone's vision blinded instantly. Michael's head buzzed as he felt the world shift again. Feeling this twice now, he knew when he opened his eyes he wouldn't be in the same place, but at least the ringing in his ears was a bit less this time. Chapter 3. Michael stood at the wooden kitchen counter in the medieval-style home. Outside the window he could see the edge of the forest. He was still inside the Kingdom of Azure, but right near one of the gates that led out of the place. The floor where Michael had first transported in had a small dusty ring where he had been placed, like the magic had indented into the stone foundation. Michael's eyes flicked through the simple menu, starting with Tool. The gray menu opened to show a screwdriver icon with 5 circles under it. 4 of the 5 had stars in them, and under that read Angel Level. Michael scrolled down the page, realizing there was text half out of view on the bottom. Abilities was the text as it came up, followed by 4 abilities written out. It was bizarre. They all had names, descriptions, and cooldowns. The first one seemed to be the strongest one, if he had to guess based on the cooldowns. Upgrade. Enhance any item into an angel-level relic for 1 hour. Cooldown 1 hour. But how do I... A freaky, cartoonish version of Jack's mask that resembled a basketball-sized bubble popped into existence next to Michael and responded instantly. Summon your tool by thinking about the tool's icon. Then say the name of your ability with the intention to cast it. The voice came out high-pitched, like Jack was speaking through one of those kids' toy megaphones. Michael jumped back, turning his menu off in a scramble. "Oh my God! Are you watching us all at the same time?" The semi-transparent orange bubble widened its crimson grin. "Just sending some messages out when I feel like I need to. You got this, pal." The bubble popped in that orange, confetti-like energy. Michael took a few deep breaths before looking at his hand and thinking about his tool's icon. Just like that, a gray metal screwdriver with a rubbery black handle appeared in his hand. It had a yellow bar up the side that read, Michael, like his name was a brand. He gripped his new tool tightly and sighed. Screw turn. The screwdriver in his hand instantly grew to be a 10-foot-long version of itself with a sharper tip like a spear, the handle forming 2 spots along it that looked easier to grip. Michael yelped and grabbed his tool with both hands as the tip drove through the wooden countertop he was in front of. Holy shit, okay, so that's what battle mode is. Screw Turn had been the last ability on the list. It was marked as a passive with no cooldown. The description told him he could switch between build mode and battle mode. While in battle mode, he couldn't use his other abilities, but he gained slightly heightened strength and speed. Michael felt a bit stronger as he pulled the 30-pound screwdriver spear out of the countertop with a yank that sent splinters in the air. Michael gave a few surprised hops and breaths before jabbing with the spear a few times in the air. This was crazy, all of it, but at this point there was no time to think about that. He had to talk to someone, to get some plan in motion. Maybe it would be okay to just team for a while. Michael opened his inbox and found Alexis's name before opening a chat with her. The chat window opened separately from the normal menu, a smaller interface in the bottom left of his vision. Getting used to just thinking about symbols, he focused on the chat icon. Michael quickly realized he could think directly into the chat. Michael, Alexis, where are you? I'm near one of the kingdom gates by the forest. Alexis, I'm in the forest trying to get a grasp on my tool. It all seems pretty straightforward. Who's your target? Michael felt a chill up his spine. He hadn't even examined the compass fully yet. He did a slow spin until he saw a white marker that looked like a skull. A name popped up above it when he centered the compass to it. Des. Michael, it's Des, and it's aimed right at the forest to my west. This is crazy. We can't just kill each other. Alexis, I agree, but I don't know how much of a choice we really have. As long as we don't have each other as targets, I think it should be fine if we work together, though. Michael, yeah, let's try to meet up at the Western Kingdom Gate. We can try to sort out a plan. Alexis, we can try to survive. Michael's eyes stared at her last message for a bit too long, a dark haze filling his mind. What plan could they possibly make in this situation? The weight was suddenly heavy in his head. If he wanted to survive, he might actually have to kill these people, his own friends. Would he have to kill Alexis? Jack couldn't possibly want that. Could he even do it if it came down to his life, or someone else's? Michael used screw turn to go back into build mode, holding his small screwdriver and looking around the wood and stone of the room, a few metal items lying about. His second ability, dismantle, allowed him to pull an item into his inventory and break it down into its usable parts on a 30-second cooldown. Michael began using dismantle on everything in the home one by one, slowly gathering up material for his third and final ability, craft. This one let Michael create an item out of the material in his inventory with a 20-minute cooldown. He wasn't sure how exactly that one was going to work, or how much he would need to know about the items he was creating, but Michael wanted to find out as soon as possible. While collecting material, Michael found a door that led to a backyard forge, with an anvil and tons of metal armor and weapons displayed as if this had been some kind of home business. After about 30 minutes of collecting things into his inventory with dismantle, Michael heard a voice call to him from across the road. He looked over from the outdoor forge to see Olivia standing nervously. She had her smartphone with that purple decorated case in one hand, her other hand tucked behind her back. Michael, do you want to stick together? Michael could hear the anxiety in her voice, causing it to tremble and stutter her words out. He quickly ran to the road and called across it. Are you okay? Yeah, Alexis is... Olivia held the phone out at Michael like she was taking a picture. Strike a pose! There was a loud camera noise from the phone as a blinding flash washed over him. From behind her back, Olivia took out a 12-inch chef's knife. I'm so sorry, Michael. I really don't want to do this. Michael felt his heart leap into his throat as his whole body went stiff. He couldn't move a muscle as he watched the short, purple-haired woman clumsily run across the road toward him. A flashing yellow indicator was blinking just over his chat window now. Paralyzed. It said he couldn't move, and certain abilities would be locked. Fuck. Time seemed to slow down as Michael raced to find a way to not get stabbed by his ex-girlfriend. His mouth was frozen open, but he could still move his tongue a little bit. A timer next to the status in his bottom left was counting down from 5 seconds. He still had 3 seconds left. Olivia was halfway across the road now, gripping the knife in both hands as she rushed him. Michael's ability name came out in a struggling cry. Craft! The F wasn't pronounced very well, but thank God it worked, his mind thinking quickly of what he wanted to appear in front of him. Olivia lunged forward with a sobbing stab and yelped as her knife rammed into a 4-inch thick, 5-foot by 5-foot wooden wall. The tip of the knife stuck out of the back of the wall a few inches from Michael's chest, just as the paralysis wore off. Michael summoned his screwdriver to his hand and yelled out, "Screw turn!" The screwdriver grew into its spear-like battle mode as Olivia squealed in frustrated panic, trying to yank her knife out of the wood wall. Michael flipped the screwdriver with his new strength, catching it by the metal and swinging the rubber handle of the weapon like a baseball bat into the wooden wall, sending it and Olivia flying back across the road. Olivia scrambled to get to her feet after rolling across the road. She ran toward her knife that had clattered away into the yard nearest her. Michael ran back toward the forge, away from her, hiding behind the wall of the home and shouting, "Olivia, stop! We can work together." "No, I'm pretty sure we can't. That creepy version of Jack is gonna show up and cut my head off like he did to Ethan if I don't kill you." "I am sorry," her shaky voice shouted over as she made her way back toward the house Michael was hiding behind. Michael took a deep breath as he realized he couldn't really argue with that. The dark haze in his mind got a little heavier. "I'm sorry, too. I'm not just gonna lay down and die." Olivia was in front of the house, roughly 30 feet away from him. Michael knew the moment she saw him. Olivia was going to use that strike-a-pose ability again if it was off cooldown. Michael took a deep breath in as he gripped his weapon. He quietly used screw turn to go back into building mode. This was his tool for a reason. Jack said these were connected to a person's soul. Ideas flooded through the haze in Michael's mind until he landed on one. He pressed his shoes together and leaned down, putting the tip of his screwdriver to them. He really hoped they counted as one item. Upgrade. The ability caused his sneakers to glow and morph around his feet. The dull gray and red shoes became sleek, almost black-gray boots. The bottom of each had 2 tank-like treads built into the outsole. His chat window, around where the paralysis status had displayed, read, "Temporary item, Angel Relic, Rush Boots. Allows the user to move 60 miles per hour when active." A 1-hour timer appeared next to the notification. Michael had a vague idea he might get a movement buff from upgrading his shoes, but this was perfect. "I can't use that move for another 10 minutes, I swear. Just come out and we can have a fair fight." Michael could hear the fear dripping off of every one of Olivia's words. Michael knew she was lying, but he had a plan now. He prayed this would work. It happened as quickly as the first clash had. Michael switched into battle mode, gripping his spear-like weapon in front of him as he turned the corner and activated his rush boots, the treads spinning like chainsaw blades, digging into the ground and shooting him forward as the flash of Olivia's strike-a-pose ability washed over him again. He was, in fact, frozen, but his rush boots were not, the weapon ahead of him now barreling toward Olivia like a lance. Michael had no way to move under the paralysis. He couldn't abort the plan if he wanted to. Olivia tried to get out of the way, but the screwdriver pierced her right in the stomach, going in one end and out the other as they both whizzed toward the road. The knife flew from her hand as her phone dissipated into thin air. Without being able to control his rush boots, they hit the rim of the stone road. Both of them crashed and spun across the road. In the middle of flying through the air, the paralysis wore off, and Michael dissipated his screwdriver in a panic, trying to tuck and roll into a yard. Olivia hit the corner of the same home neck first with a disturbing crunch. Olivia landed on top of Michael like a sandbag, stopping his momentum as he slid through the grass, his head touching the edge of the house as he felt Olivia's dead body gushing blood onto him. He had been a few feet from hitting the house the way she did, but he was alive. Olivia was dead. Fuck. Chapter 4. Des ran a nervous hand through his blue mohawk as he looked down at Maddie's pale and limp body lying on the forest floor. Her long pink hair was splayed into the grass around her. Her throat slit as her normally vibrant blue eyes stared into the sun above. Isabella stopped beside him and put a hand on his shoulder. "It was you or her?" We did what we had to. Des gave a soft laugh that started to tremble into a hysterical rumble. She was still my partner, but thank you for doing it for me. Isabella watched him take in a deep breath and rub both hands down his face. She wondered if it would be smarter to just strike him while he was weak. Her lips quirked up into a smile, and she said, "You owe me now. You're gonna help me take down Alexis. Then we can see who your next target is." Des held his hand out. His tool, a blue and black guitar, had a body shaped like a double-headed battle axe. He swung the weapon over his shoulder and gave Isabella a wicked grin. "He said 1 or 2, right? For the end, maybe he wants us all to form teams like this. Pretty sick of him to make my first target Maddie, though. I'm gonna have to make him suffer for that one." Isabella clutched her tool in her hand nervously as she examined him closer. He was off his rocker, but she had sort of thought that before all this Jack business had started. The egg-shaped makeup sponge in her hand began to quiver as she cast one of her abilities. Her form began to shift and shimmer until she was a perfect copy of Maddie. Des took a step back, looking startled. "What the fuck are you doing?" "I'm sorry, but don't you think it'll be easier to trick people if you're running around with your girlfriend?" "Most of all, it'll help me trick them." Her voice was a perfect match and sent a shiver up Des's spine. "Whatever, just—" He paused and looked toward the kingdom of azure far in the distance. "Don't go pulling any weird shit on me." This got a cackle to burst from Isabella as she turned her head to lock back onto Alexis's direction. "Don't worry, Sonic. You're not my type." Michael was sitting on the other side of the house from Olivia's body, facing the western gate as he was hunched over and puking in the side yard. His hand repeatedly came up to rub the tears out of his eyes. He had killed her. He had liked Olivia, and he had killed her. She was just scared like he was. She felt cornered like he did. And now she was dead. She had such a powerful ability, and he had found a loophole in it. Did he deserve to be alive right now? Nothing felt right as the world spun. He sat back against the side of the house as he stared a hole through the fence beside the gate. Michael lost track of time as he sat with the haze in his mind, lost in memories of Olivia. All he knew was his cooldowns had reset, and his rush boots had reverted back to normal sneakers. Michael began hearing crunching from the forest, and he slowly got to his feet in a panic. Was it Alexis or whoever had him as a target now? What if Alexis had gotten him as a target? His chat window popped open in the bottom left. "Alexis, are you near the western gate? I see it, and I'm headed in now." Michael, "Yeah, I'm inside by the first house on your right, but I had to fight already." Alexis, "What? Who?" Michael, "Olivia. I didn't have a choice. She was going to kill me." Alexis, "Just hang on. I'm almost to the gate. We can group up and figure out what our next move is." Michael thought about asking her directly if this was a trick, if she was here to kill him. But if she was, after killing Olivia, maybe he could accept that. He couldn't kill Alexis. Jack and Alexis had been his best friends for most of his life. He couldn't do this. Michael, "Okay." Alexis looked surprisingly well put together as she rushed through the gate and looked for him. Her black hair was up in a high ponytail, her brown eyes almost as sharp as the gladius she carried in her right hand. The shining silver blade was maybe 2.5 feet in length, with a wooden and gold handle. She had a scabbard at her hip that looked to be made of gold metal and black leather. As her eyes locked onto Michael, she slammed the sword back into its scabbard and ran to kneel down beside him. "Are you okay? Are you injured?" "No, but Olivia is dead." His voice came out quiet and ashamed. "Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm glad you're okay. You did what you had to," she said. Michael tensed. None of us should have to do any of this. This is sick. Alexis took a deep breath and put her hand on Michael's arm. Stand up. We have to move. Michael looked up at her. How firm she seemed, the intensity in her gaze. Every time something went wrong in life, she would always push through and drag those around her forward. Every D&D game, she was a relentless fighter. In that dumb MMO they all used to play, she would lead every charge as the tank. There was currently no one in this world he trusted more than her, so he got to his feet and wiped his eyes one last time. Alexis sighed and got a slight smile as she watched him straighten himself. He looked at her concealed weapon and said, "A sword, huh? That's pretty fitting." Alexis gave a dry laugh. "I mean, you're not wrong, but I kind of wish I got a brush to paint with all the colors of the rainbow." Michael allowed himself a slight smile before taking his screwdriver out of thin air and showing it off. Alexis eyed it and said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I can make it grow into a sort of screwdriver spear thing, too. It makes me a bit stronger when I do." Michael showed off his battle mode for a brief moment before going into detail about his build mode abilities. Alexis took it all in before describing her own abilities. She only had two, a passive that just said it boosted all of her physical attributes to angel level while her tool was out, and one called Battle Sense that allowed her to see her enemy's movements 1 second in the future for 10 minutes, but on a 1-hour cooldown. I haven't even seen attributes anywhere. My passive just says I gained slightly increased strength and speed, Michael said. I found it. I was curious because of my passive's description. You have to click on the stars under your tool icon. Michael gave it a shot, opening his menu, going to Tool, and mentally clicking on the section of stars under the icon. A 5-pointed star pulled up. Each of the points had a different stat: strength, speed, perception, magic, and brains. Strength, speed, and perception were labeled physical stats, while magic and brains were labeled mystic stats. The piece of the star connected to each stat had a word in it. In his current build mode, the spread was strength/monster, speed/monster, perception/mortal, magic/demon, brains/angel. Michael switched over to battle mode and saw that his strength and speed both went from monster to demon. Oh, I think I'm getting it. It's a 5-stage system as far as I can tell right now. The lowest I've seen is mortal, and the highest is god. Mortal, monster, demon, angel, and god. Alexis nodded and said, "Okay, that makes sense. Wow, this passive I have seems way overpowered then." "Yeah, even in my battle mode you outshine me in every physical stat. God, my perception is only mortal, which I'm guessing means normal. What is it like with your tool out?" Michael prodded. Alexis looked out into the forest. "It was a lot at first, but I ultimately decided it was smartest to keep it out permanently. With this angel perception I can hear and see way more than I could before. I feel like I have 60/60 vision and I can hear like Dolores from Encanto." "I never watched that movie. Is that good?" Michael said, getting a bit lost at the end. "It's a mixed bag. It took me a second to adjust, but I'm getting used to being able to hear so much." Alexis stopped toward the gate and peered through it. "Speaking of that, you said Des is in the woods this way. What's that tracker looking like?" Michael looked at his compass and faced the forest in the direction she was looking. Sure enough, he saw Des's target icon. Staring at the icon, he slowly realized it was getting larger. Des was making his way in this direction for some reason. "Oh shit, he's headed this way. But why? He shouldn't have me as a..." Alexis sighed a bit and pulled her gladius back out. "It must be me he's after. You can run if you're not ready. We could meet back up after." Michael felt the dark haze weigh his head down for a moment. his silence stretching over the both of them. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths before saying, "No, we're a team, Alexis. We face this head-on and together. If my target becomes you after this, then just take me out. I won't fight back." Alexis looked over at him with a warm smile. "If Jack wants to make us fight, he can come down here and do it himself." Jack's mask-like orange bubble appeared behind her and shouted, "I assure you the targets are picked at random." Alexis yelped in fear and slashed the bubble in half, popping it on the spot. Only a second later, it appeared behind Michael and continued, "But rest assured, if you get each other and don't fight," its high-pitched, annoying voice lowered to a weird, dark chipmunk tone, "I will come down and do it myself." The bubble popped away, leaving an ominous air around the two. Alexis shivered and slowly put her sword back in the scabbard. Her voice quivered. "That just can't be my Jack. It can't." After a few moments to gather themselves, Michael walked next to Alexis and said, "It'll be okay. I'm gonna try something. I think I can make us a sweet ride." "What do you have in mind?" Alexis looked at him curiously as he outstretched his hand by the gate, and his ability name rang out. "Craft." From his hand, dark gray material oozed out and started shaping into an intricately designed motorbike. The motion was odd, like a dark sludge being moved around and molded by invisible hands in front of them. A focused look on Michael's face as the sludge solidified slowly, going from fluid to more of a kinetic sand before finally hardening into its final shape. It was made of pure dark metal, all collected from the forge from earlier, including the wheels, which were designed like the treads from the rush boots. It was sleek and big enough for two people to comfortably ride on. Visually, it was a mix between the bottom treads of a tank, pushed so close together they almost resembled one, and the top was the smooth style of a Kawasaki motorcycle. The metal seat and handlebars had some kind of dark leather that blended into the metal, and right in front of the seat was what looked like a slot for a key. Michael looked over at Alexis with a nervous smile. "God, I hope this works." Michael stuck his screwdriver in the key slot and activated his ability. Upgrade, Chapter 5. Luco held his hand out toward Jack and helped him up the side of the mountain. "Up you go. Come on." Jack quickly got to his feet before turning, both he and Luco helping Nandra up next. She flopped up onto the mountainside and rolled to her back, arms outstretched as she looked at the sky, her voice coming out through gasping breaths. "We need to get someone on the team who can fly." Luco looked between her and Jack before he burst into laughter, shaking his head. "Maybe Jack can nab a tool off of one of our enemies. He's already got a dozen. Surely he'll be able to fly at some point." Jack looked into the sky and imagined it, flying through the air with no need for climbing or even walking anymore. With a long sigh, Jack brought his attention down to his new friends. Wouldn't that just be a dream? The wind in my mane, the sun on my back. I can't imagine anything better. Luco's tool, a silver mace, formed in his hand, and he pointed forward with a hopeful tone in his voice. "Come on, you two. We must push forward. We're the only ones who can stop Bale." Nandra pushed to her feet and dusted herself off before stepping behind the passionate man. Her eyes caught Jack's, and they both had a small chuckle. "Beats the mindless training at home, I guess." Jack looked at the silver mace gleaming so victoriously in the sunlight, a sight that made him feel like anything was possible. Like this was all worth it. They would save all of Ressia. Jack and his friends from this world could make it through anything as long as they were all together. They could face any foe. Jack held the gleaming mace in his hand as he floated over the azure forest. He gazed into the reflection on it, 60 years later, and he could still vividly hear the sickening crunch of Bale's heel, crushing Luco's head like a watermelon, the sizzle and scream of Nandra's body as she burned in the god-level ability of the Demon Lord, the way she had used her healing abilities to survive in the Inferno longer, ultimately in vain, just torturing herself when she could have let it end so quickly. Jack's eyes slowly glided from Luco's mace down to the forest, where he saw Alexis and Michael speeding through the trees on the cleverly designed motorbike. Would working together make them weak? Did it make his team weak? He had been through so many teams, but he was the constant. He was the only one strong enough to survive each assault on Bale and his forces. Michael working with Alexis, Des working with Isabella. Was it a hindrance? Why did he say one or two could be chosen when he had only planned for one? Was he still weak? Weak? Jack was the most powerful being in all of Retsia. Nobody even came close to the level of strength he had attained with Heaven's gift. He had more tools than he could count after years of defeating the people who threatened this world. Even so, with the amount of people he worked with, the amount of deaths he saw from the weaklings around him, his mind always drifted back to Luco and Nandra, the first friends that felt close with him in the same way he was with Michael and Alexis. The memories of Luco and Nandra, his first party, played on a loop in his head as Jack watched over his friends from Earth, his best friend and his lover. Should he intervene and set the game on track, or simply let this play out? He was running out of time to decide as the memories of home flooded his mind. Jack tossed his controller to the side and let out an annoyed breath as he jabbed a finger at Michael. "You're too good at this game, man. We gotta find something that's more evenly matched." Michael shook his head and shrugged playfully. "Or you can just practice and get better like I do. That might work." "Oh, can it? You spend way too long on this dumb game. You're lucky Alexis isn't here. She'd mop the floor with you," Jack retorted. Michael raised an eyebrow. "I don't know about all that, but she'd definitely be more of a challenge than Mr. Sore Loser over here." Jack remembered tackling Michael after that. It was all jokes. They fought for a bit before laughing and turning on some dumb show to watch while they waited for Alexis to get off work. Why was he thinking about these old, useless memories now? Jack watched as the two pairs grew closer and closer to each other, Michael and Alexis rapidly approaching Dez's group. His grip on Luco's mace tightened, his muscles flexing as he thought about flying down and casting judgment on them. Only one person could gain the strength to stand at his side. It was the only way. His most intimate memories of Alexis were jabbing inside his head. They were loud and wriggling, trying to escape out of his ears like worms had infested his brain. Alexis, the only woman he had ever loved. She was alive and here. She was a part of his game. Would she be the one person strong enough to stand by his side, to help him stop Heaven's pointless cycle? A big part of him hoped she was, but an equally big part of him knew he had to be okay with it not being her. Otherwise, what was the point of the game? He needed the best of them, and only one would be worthy. Only one. But as Jack regained his composure, he stopped floating down toward the forest and paused above the trees. The two groups were seconds away from seeing each other, so perhaps he would just let this play out. Jack let the mace dissipate as he crossed his arms, watching over them. It was his fault for not specifying the rules more clearly. He would allow this fight to happen before he made any rash decisions. His eyes settled on Alexis as she gripped onto the bike with one hand, her gladius in the other, as Michael drove toward the marked target on his compass. The mask on Jack's face creaked as the crimson teeth spread into a deeper, sharper grin. He was ready to see them in action. He was ready to see their power. Chapter 6. Michael swerves the bike to stop 30 feet in front of Des and Maddie. Alexis hops off and looks between them cautiously. Michael takes a shaken breath before he steels himself and calls out, "Are you two looking for a fight?" Des takes a step in front of Maddie, his blue axe-shaped electric guitar still slung over his shoulder. "Are you?" Alexis puts her free hand up. "Let's stay calm, guys." Des takes a look back over at Maddie. "Neither of them are my target or yours, right, babe?" "Nope, not mine." "Interesting that they ran straight into us then." Des's eyes flicked back to Michael. Michael got off the bike and put his hands up. "I'm serious, Des. I don't want any trouble. Let's just talk for a second and figure out—" Alexis whipped around and slashed her sword past Michael, hitting the sharp metal arm of Isabella, catching the blade-like arm in a clash right before it tore through Michael's back. Isabella grunted and bounced back, her other arm morphing into a metal blade, making her resemble a scyther from Pokémon. Michael quickly grabbed the handle of his bike. It started moving forward right away, Michael throwing his leg over it to get seated as he used screw turn to go into battle mode with his lance-like weapon, speeding in an arc to reroute straight for Des and Maddie. Except Maddie was no longer behind Des. He was alone. Alexis bolted forward in the same moment that Michael took off, and she slammed a downward slash at Isabella. There was no more room for hesitation. Isabella crossed both arm blades up to catch the swing, before forcing it to bounce backward up into the air. Isabella brought her blades all the way around in the motion, aiming them to chop directly into Alexis's midsection. Alexis, still trying to regain footing after the deflection of her attack, decided in an instant to lean all the way back, using her new strength to limbo-style dodge the attack before shouting, "Battle sense!" Michael was now shooting toward Des in a straight line with his screwdriver aimed forward. Where had Maddie gone? Before he had too much time to think about it, Des swung his guitar into a playing position and winked at Michael. Amp! Over Des's head, a transparent blue amp appeared with crackling energy. With one strum of his tool, the amp let out a loud tone that blasted through the air, landing over Michael like a physical pressure. Michael gritted his teeth as the front of the bike dug into the ground, and he flipped over the top of it, the bike skidding across the ground next to him as he rammed his lance-sized screwdriver into the ground to stop himself from flying forward any further. The tone continued to play, causing him to sink toward the dirt with the pressure as his ears rang. Alexis whipped up with her ability active, now able to read Isabella's movements a moment before she committed to them. Isabella grunted and started stepping back quickly as she deflected a few aggressive blows from Alexis's relentless gladius. Des's tone ripped through the air around Isabella and Alexis. They were out of the cone of pressure that hit Michael, but the sound still caught Alexis off guard. She needed to focus on both of them, but it was too much information at once. Blood spurted from a deep cut across Alexis's left arm as Isabella landed a slash in the distraction. Alexis had to trust in Michael to handle Des for now. The pressure weighing on Michael eased up as the amp faded away from above Des. He noticed that the ability had gotten Alexis struck in her fight. He had to redirect Des's attacks away from her. Michael ripped his screwdriver from the ground while his eyes darted to the bike around 10 feet away to his side and Des a good 15 feet ahead of him. He had to figure out a plan, but he could already see Des circling him. He was trying to get an attack to line up Michael, Alexis, and Isabella at once. He was going to try and blast them all with something. Probably not amp again. That seemed too powerful to not have a big cooldown. Michael saw the lightning as it crackled off of Des's guitar strings. Michael turned to shout over to Alexis, "Hit her over here and drop your tool." Alexis, who had gotten the upper hand quickly on Isabella after she locked her focus on her, twirled around another arm blade slash and kicked her in the back as hard as she could toward Michael, trusting him. It happened in an instant. Isabella flew into Michael with the wind knocked out of her. He dropped his weapon to catch her with both hands. He could tell, even without holding his weapon, he was still getting the strength boost from having it out. With a roar of effort, Michael threw the flailing woman directly at Des. Isabella slashing a light cut across Michael's face and shoulder as Dez's primed attack released. "Taste my lightning!" Alexis dissipated her tool just before the ability was released, like Michael had said. Michael turned and tried to dive away just as lightning crackled through the air, striking Isabella first and stopping her momentum with the full force of the magic. Lightning arced off of her body and blasted the screwdriver and metal bike just ahead of Michael, her screams drowned out by the lightning's hiss. Isabella's body looked charred as it fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Michael looked over his shoulder to see Dez's wild, wide-eyed smile. With a spin of his axe-like guitar, he slammed it into the ground and caused a crater with his strength. "There we go! Now my buff is active!" Alexis's gladius formed straight back into her hand as she watched Isabella's limp form sizzle. Her eyes darted between the charred body and Michael, watching him get back to his feet and yank his battle-mode screwdriver back off of the ground. Michael caught her eyes, then grew pale as he saw the fear that dawned on her face. Her voice came out in a harsh yell that he could barely make out through his ringing ears. "Behind you!" Michael swung himself around with his screwdriver, swinging it like a bat. He caught the slash from Maddie, her arms the same metal blades that Isabella's had been. Maddie stumbled backward with a grunt before shouting an obscenity at Alexis. Alexis was sprinting for Michael now, to join up at his side. But before she made it close, Des leaped toward her, axe raised high in the air as he shouted, "Not so fast!" The weight of his swing almost buried Alexis's feet into the ground as she caught it with both hands on her sword. Whatever his buffs had been clearly put him at or above her level of physical strength. She had to focus. She had to trust Michael could handle Maddie. With a roar of effort, Alexis slashed Dez's swing off of her and sent him a few feet back. He gave a few hops before putting on that cocky smile he loved to wear, although his tone was bitter. "I'm just getting started. Think your boy toy is gonna save you if I go for the kill." "Jack is dead." The words left Alexis's mouth cold and flat. Michael grunted as he blocked the wild swings from Maddie's arm blades with clumsy effort. "Why do you have the same ability as Isabella?" Maddie's face twisted and contorted like something out of a horror movie, going to a flat, featureless face before shifting back to Isabella's likeness. "I am Isabella, dumbass. Maddie's already dead." Michael's thoughts raced as his eyes shot to the side just behind her where the motorbike lay on its side. "Yeah, you killed her, huh? Pretty messed up. I'm guessing you led Des here because one of us is your target?" Isabella made another vicious, mantis-like swing for Michael's neck, barely getting blocked by his spear of a screwdriver. She didn't answer his question. He had been trying to distract her. It was right at that moment Michael felt his 20-minute cooldown on craft finish. He wasted no time. Leaping a few feet back to bait her into another rush attack, he did a similar creation to the one he had first crafted to block Olivia's rush, a 4-inch thick 5-foot by 5-foot wall. This time the wall had some new feature sticking out of the front, 6-inch metal spikes. Spikes that Isabella immediately and accidentally impaled herself on in a few places, letting out a cry of pain. Michael flipped his screwdriver, grabbing it by the metal and swinging the giant rubbery end against the back of the wood. There was a sickening crunch as it rammed forward and fell on top of Isabella, blood oozing through the grass as her screams were cut short. Michael ran over to his bike and got it back up and running as quickly as he could. A little orange bubble popped into existence next to his ear. Jack prodded at him. "You're a real lady killer, huh, Michael?" Michael flung a hand up and waved the bubble away, voice shaking. "Jack, I'm trying to focus." Alexis had her full attention on Des, dodging his large axe swings and lashing out with shortcuts where she could, blood running down his arms and chest now. His clothes had been torn up, but all his wounds were minor, and his smile still held that crazed look of a man with nothing to lose. Alexis still had 5 minutes on her battle sensibility. His strength was definitely a bit over hers, but being able to predict every move he made along with her speed gave her the edge. If only she could land one killing blow without getting split in half like a log. Dez's ears perked up as he heard the hum of Michael's bike growing louder. Both he and Alexis were scared to take their eyes or weapons off of each other as they yet again clashed. "Isabella," Des cautiously called out. Alexis's battle sense gave her just enough time to react, sidestepping the axe and dissipating her weapon, causing Dez's axe to slam into the ground just as Michael's screwdriver skewered him straight through his chest. Blood sprayed from his chest and mouth at once as the bike drove his limp body straight into a tree and crashed. Michael tumbled from the bike, his tool sticking Des to the tree until Michael got to his feet and dissipated it. Des slid down the side of the tree, leaving a thick crimson trail as he bled out and sputtered something unintelligible. Michael stumbled his way back over to Alexis, who had her weapon back out and in its scabbard. "Are you okay? Sorry, that was stupid." Alexis looked toward the slumped form of Des and the wooden board laying over Isabella with only her feet sticking out like she was the Wicked Witch of the East. "I'm alive, so good job." Michael gave her a weak smile before noticing that his target up on his compass had changed. It now read Daniel, and the icon looked pretty far away, face toward the Kingdom of Azure. Alexis noticed the change in him and reached out to grab his arm. "It'll be okay. Let's take a moment to think and—" One of Jack's orange bubbles formed between them and shouted, "Boring? Listen up, everybody. I wasn't clear enough earlier, so let me make this perfectly crystal." A teleportation circle formed under both Michael and Alexis's feet as they gasped and made sure their limbs were to themselves. "One of you will stand at my side at the end of this game. One of you will defy the very heavens with me, and no one here is on a team. Now let's shake things up." Jack gave an excited laugh, far more unhinged than it had sounded earlier, before the bubble popped into magic orange mist. Alexis looked over at Michael with a sad expression. "I'll message you when I get my bearings." Michael gave a quick nod. "Same to you." He tried to keep the fear from his voice, and it was surprisingly easy this time, a numbness filling him as the dark fog in his head felt heavier than before. The pillars of light flashed, and everyone was rearranged. Chapter 7. Alexis appeared on the other end of the forest, on the eastern side of Azure now. Stepping out of the ash-colored ring in the grass, she sat against a tree and checked her compass. Her target was Emily, and the icon still looked far away and inside of the kingdom. That didn't seem like a very good shakeup unless whoever was targeting her was nearby. Her inbox in the bottom left blinked at her. Ryan. "Hey, Alexis, I think you just got teleported right next to me." Alexis. "You would only know that if I was your target. Why are you telling me?" Ryan. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I think I'm going to have to." Alexis. "I'm sorry, too. I'm not going down easy." Ryan. "I know. Just wanted to give you a fair warning. We're fighting pretty much right now. Good luck." Alexis. "You too." Alexis felt sick after sending the message, wishing a friend luck in a fight to the death with herself. What sort of absurd world had they been dragged into? She stood quickly and ready, her sword drawn as she looked around trying to catch a glimpse of Ryan through the trees. She still had an hour left on her battle sense cooldown, so this fight had to be won with her powerful hard body passive. Ryan clutched his bolt-action rifle close, a weapon he was all too familiar with from his days hunting with Jack. Now he was hunting Jack's girlfriend? Telling her might have been a mistake. He could have ended the fight so quickly. Ryan was no coward, even if his abilities would work best in the hands of one. Alexis was his friend. She deserved a fair shot. Ryan took aim, the scope of his rifle trained on her as he focused from around a bush far off in the distance. Alexis felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up as she heard the shot. With her inhuman physical abilities, she leaped to the side to avoid the round. Her heart sank as she saw the round start to curve toward her anyway at a high speed. It was homing onto her. She had no choice but to swing her gladius upwards just as it was about to impact, slicing the round out of the air before looking toward the area it was shot from, and sprinting in that direction. Alexis could see the glint of the rifle's scope. Ryan cursed as he chambered another round with a loud click of metal. He aimed again, but the speeding form of Alexis was a lot harder to keep track of. His ability, Hunter's Mark, was a passive that allowed his shots to home if he could keep aim on the same target for 30 seconds or more. Useless now. Ryan popped 3 more shots at the woman rushing him down, each followed by the same click of metal that Alexis was starting to memorize. The first 2 shots missed entirely, but with a focused breath, the third shot nearly took her leg. Alexis barely managed to shift out of the way, tripping at a high speed and sending her tumbling straight into a tree, almost knocking the wind out of herself before she clambered to hide behind it. Ryan only had 1 shot left before he had to reload. He was astonished she had managed to cut his homing round out of the air like that. He still had a few tricks up his sleeve. Now that she wasn't looking at him for a moment, he muttered his ability name under his breath. On the hunt. Ryan's form shimmered before fading into invisibility, quickly trying to reorient himself as quietly as possible as Alexis caught her breath and listened for him. She didn't see him rushing away to quickly line up another shot, but she heard him. Ryan's breath shook as he held his aim on her, waiting for his passive to activate. He could see her eyes searching carefully in his direction. What kind of monster had she become with that sword of hers? Just a few more seconds, and he would be able to make another homing shot. Alexis gambled on where she thought he was, having already deduced he had gone invisible with her new perception. She rushed almost straight for him, sword in front of her and ready for his tricky gunplay. Ryan's passive activated, and with his shot also came his form shimmering back into existence from around a tree. Alexis felt a swell of conflicting emotions as she realized she had been correct about where he was, as well as what he was doing. The homing shot flew straight at her. With a twirl, she passed the shot as she ran, knowing it would take a moment to curve back toward her. She could see Ryan fully reloading 5 cartridges into his rifle. She could make the distance before he was done. The round behind Alexis curved upward before flying toward her back at a terrifying speed, but Alexis was aware of it. This was an attack on 2 fronts. Ryan felt his stomach drop just as the last cartridge slid into the chamber. The distance now was too short. He hadn't gotten far enough away because of his fear. Ryan saw Alexis drop to her knees and slide through the grass like an old-school rocker, her head tilting all the way to one side as the round almost took it clean off. Instead, it shot past its target again, this time speeding directly for Ryan's chest. Ryan could have gotten out of the way and it would have redirected toward her again, but he could see her ready to toss her sword whichever way he decided to dodge. Ryan didn't have much time to think, but he was proud of himself in the face of such a beast. He fell directly to the ground, aimed his rifle straight into the air and yelled, "Long shot!" The round flew past him and began to curve upward again to fling itself back at Alexis. She froze before throwing her blade. What did that ability do, and why had he fired directly into the sky? She couldn't afford to kill him at the risk of her own life. For a brief moment her eyes shot up to see the shot in the air, directing itself straight down at her, like a hawk. At the same time, the round in front of her was now doing the same in a straight line. Ryan rolled to the tree he had hid behind before breaking into a full sprint, trying to get away from her to gain distance again. Dodging one speeding round a few times was already a lot of effort, but two at once was just ridiculous, even for her. Alexis let out a breath of frustration as she tried to slash the hawk-like round from above, while yet again barely dodging the one below. The round, too, must have been frustrated, not wanting to miss her a third time. It skimmed her left arm, tearing her flesh open, blood spraying down her arm. Thankfully, she managed to slice the higher round out of the air. The one that had tasted her blood hit the ground, satisfied with its meal. Ryan turned, feeling like he was a good distance away again, only to see the vicious woman still chasing him, her wound kissing the open air as her right hand held firm on her gladius. With gritted teeth, Alexis yelled, "Pretty slick moves, Ryan! Got any more?" Ryan felt a chill as he lifted his rifle in a panic and missed two more sloppy shots at the speeding target. Why the fuck had he warned her? This girl was as much of a monster as Jack was. She was getting too close too fast. He lifted his tool to block her heavy-handed swing. The rifle went flying from his grip, a shallow slash cutting across his face. Alexis's wounded arm flew up and rocked him across the jaw. Ryan's vision spinning as black stars and spots danced across his sight. Before Ryan could even react to being hit, he felt the cold blade plunge into his heart, sheathed in his chest for only a moment before it was yanked out with a spray of his blood. Ryan's breath shivered and caught as his body wobbled and began to fall forward. Alexis caught him in a deep embrace, her voice quick and pained. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm sorry." Ryan's body lay in the grass as Alexis sat nearby, her breathing shaky as she tied some torn clothing around her wound to stop the bleeding. Her hand shook now. The pain stung, but the feeling of killing Ryan was different. Besides Michael, he had been the closest friend she had here. Jack and Ryan had been like cousins. Who was this man, this beast that dared to hide behind her lover's voice? His name. She held back her tears as she opened her inbox again. The first messages, of course, were the ones between her and Ryan. The good luck. She scrolled back to Michael's name on the list. Alexis. "Michael? Where are you?" "Michael. Busy." Alexis took in a deep breath as her eyes settled back onto Ryan's body. Michael was probably in the middle of his own fight. She shouldn't distract him. It wasn't as if talking about things would change any of this. She stood to her feet and dusted herself off. She felt a presence descend behind her. It was heavier than any pressure Ryan's weapon had placed on her. Her whole body shook with fear. It was that thing. She knew it. It was so close. She could turn and attack it so easily, punish it for tearing her heart open in so many ways. This had already been the hardest day of her life, when she saw Jack die, held him in her arms, applied all the pressure she could. Her voice came out in a bitter, almost whisper. "What the fuck are you? Because you're not my Jack." Jack floated behind her with a detached sense of confusion. "I'm the same me, I think. I've just learned more and more about the world and how it works." Alexis turned to see that disgusting orange mask with the putrid red teeth cracking into the obnoxious, creepy smile. She was ready to scream into it, but it wasn't there. She stared into Jack's maskless face. He looked the same as earlier that day when they were joking and pushing each other around, the same as when she held him, dying and confused in her arms. The fact he looked so similar sent her head into a spiral for a moment. Was this really her Jack? Why was the mask gone? You know, I really want you to win, he said. Her mind almost couldn't compute as she said, Is that supposed to be romantic? His eyes drifted to the sky slightly. I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen you. I thought you were all dead until I found a way to bring you here. I never took another woman, you know. Disgust rose in the back of her throat. Congratulations! Jack sighed a bit and looked back down on her, a smile touching his cheeks again. I knew you'd never love me again after this. I hope that proves to you how serious I am. This cycle must be stopped. Alexis's emotions got the better of her as she shouted through gritted teeth. I don't give a fuck about cycles or games or any of this stupid bullshit, Jack. You need to stop all this now. I can't. I will only have the best of you, so if you win, please try to understand that this is bigger than us. Bigger than Ryan. He motioned to the limp body. We're all people. We're all important. Take your brain-dead ideas and shove 'em, Jack. If I win, it'll mean nothing to you. Her bitter tone dripped with venom. Jack just gave her a smile as his mask materialized into his hand, and he placed it back on his face, the grin stretching. Good luck, Alexis. He ascended back into the air, leaving her with an empty feeling in the pit of her stomach. She watched him slip past the tops of the trees and back toward the kingdom of Azure. Alexis steadied herself and took a moment before messaging Michael again. Alexis, send me a signal when you're done. Something I can see from the edge of the kingdom. Michael didn't respond. Chapter 8. Michael was in the northernmost part of the kingdom, a large castle rising high behind him as he dismantled his way through a nearby home. Michael made sure to orient himself so that Daniel's icon was always on his compass. The distance between them was shorter than he would have liked. Michael was debating running away and regrouping with Alexis as soon as possible. But after what Jack had said, he had a feeling his only choice was to fight. Creeping between homes, Michael made his way toward Daniel. He started to hear the clink, clink, clink of metal and movement, confusion taking hold of him until he saw Daniel striding down the road in a flashy suit of silver and gold plate armor. Michael was really starting to wonder what shitty MMO he was trapped in, his screwdriver gripped tightly in his hand. Checking through his abilities, Michael found that Craft was still on cooldown for a long while, but Upgrade only had about 5 minutes until it was ready to be cast again. Communication didn't work so well the last time he tried it. Michael could attempt to follow Daniel and get him with some kind of sneak attack, but that felt so wrong. His thoughts were feeling heavier by the moment as he ran through plans that all seemed out of his depth. With a sigh of annoyance, Michael ran into the road while calling out, Daniel, is that you? Daniel turned in the clunky armor. He had a fancy-looking shield on his back and a one-handed warhammer, the end of which resembled a dragon's head. He was silent for a long moment. Michael took a hesitant step back before he attempted a calming smile. Michael, you're okay. I'm not your target, am I? Daniel said. No, of course not. I just heard your fancy new getup. Michael tensed. A bad liar as usual. Ah, I see. Well, it's good to see a familiar face, but we shouldn't dwell, Daniel said with resolve. You don't want to stick together for a little while? Michael said. I'd prefer not to get too close. I must be the one to make it to heaven, Daniel said. Michael could see the look of steel in Daniel's eyes, and he realized any form of talk was already out the window. This man had lost his mind. Daniel was ready to kill whoever he needed to, and Michael was convinced the golden hunk was ready to start with him. Daniel slid the shield from his back and lifted his hammer to a ready position. Your silence speaks for you, Michael. If you've come to battle, then let us commence the brawl. Michael shifted into battle mode, his long screwdriver appearing in both hands as he aimed it at Daniel cautiously. Why the hell are you talking like that, man? It's goddamn weird. Daniel raised his voice and banged his hammer against his shield. Do not take the Lord's name in vain! Daniel rushed down the road at Michael with a crazed look in his eyes. Divine smite! His ability flared in golden light round his warhammer, wisps of light radiating around the weapon in swirls that would look beautiful in any other circumstance. Michael's abilities were all on cooldown besides dismantle. In his panic, he extended his hand toward the raging bull in front of him. The brute's swing rocketed down toward Michael at the same moment he called out his dismantle ability. Michael's hand met the warhammer, the weapon seeming to just vanish from the world in an instant, the golden energy dissipating as Daniel stumbled in confusion as his own ability canceled. Michael felt himself trembling with shock. He had honestly not expected that to work. He could try it again in 30 seconds. Maybe he could strip some of that armor. Michael scrambled to grip both hands back on his screwdriver, but the relentless zealot stepped forward, drawing his fist back as it swelled with the golden energy of his divine smite. Fuck! The blow landed directly against Michael's stomach with so much force that it lifted him a foot off the ground. Michael felt bile spew from his mouth as his eyes bulged with strain. Time felt as if it slowed around him for a moment. The golden flecks of energy around the punch sparked before a loud explosion of glittering force sent Michael flying through the air and spinning down the road. Michael writhed and struggled to get breath back into his lungs as he was laid out in the road 30 feet away from Daniel's menacing frame, his fist smoking. Michael was still alive, but he was pretty sure that was only because of his increased stats from battle mode. Michael shot up to a sitting position, taking in gulps of air as he steadied himself. Daniel was clutching his shield tightly as he walked down the road toward him. I'm sorry it has to end like this, Michael. You'll be with our Heavenly Father soon enough. Michael looked between the holy paladin of a man in front of him and the sprawling castle behind him down the road. He needed time. With a scramble to his feet, Michael took off in a full sprint toward the open castle gates. Still dizzy from the divine smite, he did the best he could while summoning his battle mode screwdriver back in his hands. It had been knocked farther away than he had. Michael felt his skin burning with nerves as he heard the quickening clink, clink, clink behind him. The front entrance of the castle was a giant set of steep stairs. Michael cursed as he took 2 steps at a time. At the top of the steps was a set of 3 heavy barrels filled with wine, based on the parchment on top of them. He just made it past the entrance. With a look down the stairs, Michael saw Daniel at the base, just starting to make the climb, his presence menacing and certain, like a horror movie villain. Michael grunted and pushed the barrels over with his superhuman strength. They had to be hundreds of pounds. With a push and kick, one went flying down the stairs, then the second and the third. Daniel kept his eyes locked onto Michael as he cast another ability, his tone uncomfortably calm as he spoke. Faith's shield. A golden barrier wrapped around Daniel like someone used the stroke tool in Photoshop on him and chose the glitteriest color they could find. The first barrel smashed into his armor and splintered in half, drenching him in dark red wine. But the beast of a man walked through it like it wasn't even an obstacle. Michael didn't wait to see the second barrel strike the indestructible man. He turned and bolted down the halls of the castle, looking for any room he could hide in for a moment, or a weapon he could defend himself better with. It was at this moment he saw his inbox pop open with Alexis's message, asking where he was. He hurried to reply he was busy before darting into a larger room with a heavy-looking door. He slammed the heavy door shut and latched the wooden plank it had for a lock tightly in place. The room around Michael was filled with giant ballista bolts bundled in boxes and a few broken-down wooden ballistas that seemed to be there for repair or storage. Michael checked his cooldowns and saw that he only had about 4 more minutes left until his upgrade ability would return. The door banged with the force of a push, and then a tackle, the wooden plank barely holding as the door itself shook. Michael backed up, taking a cautious position by the closest broken ballista to the door, switching his screwdriver to build mode as he watched the cooldown. Michael called out, "Hang on, man. Let's just talk this out for a moment." Daniel paused his beating of the cracking wooden door. "There isn't anything left to talk about. Once my divine smite returns to me, I shall tear this door down and put an end to this." "Doesn't that go against what your God would want? Isn't there a rule against killing or something?" Michael said. "The rules have clearly changed, Michael. For I am the chosen one who will break into the heavens and help my Lord," he said. Michael took a few breaths, calming himself as he kept prodding the golden hunk with random questions, trying to keep him more focused on talking than smashing the door to pieces. Almost there, just a little longer and he could pull this off. Right as he heard Daniel's voice calling out for another divine smite, his cooldown for upgrade finished. Michael slammed his screwdriver against the ballista and quietly spoke his ability's name. Golden light poured through the cracks of the heavy door before it burst into splinters so small that Michael had to wonder how he survived that punch again. Daniel's shield was sizzling with the energy, gripped tightly in his fist. Daniel's eyes widened in shock as he stared down into the room full of broken-down ballistas. His eyes locked on the one directly in front of the doorway. A solid black ballista that looked almost like charcoal, with vine-like tendrils of red-hot fleshy bits wrapped around it. The bolt in it was as blood-red and as sharp as the teeth on Jack's mask, looking more like a jagged spike of crystallized blood than a bolt. Michael didn't think twice or hesitate. He fired the ironically angel-level weapon known as the Hell Reaver. The blood spike hit with so much force that Daniel flew back out of the doorway and was pierced against the far wall. The spike buried through his golden armor, straight through his chest. Daniel coughed up blood as he tried to speak. "Heathen! I knew you were a demon in disguise." Daniel didn't get another word out. The spike in his body had some strange magic effect that caused his own blood to harden and shoot spikes throughout his skin. Daniel made a cut-off croak of pain as his body looked like a crimson porcupine. Michael looked at the Hell Reaver in shock, then back to Daniel's body. "Holy sh!" Daniel's body exploded, the metal of the armor flying out like a shrapnel grenade. One piece slashed across Michael's leg. The shield dissipated into thin air as gore coated the hallway and showered through the doorway, covering Michael and his Hell Reaver. Michael stumbled back toward the wall, hacking and spitting as he had received some of Daniel in his mouth. Michael was a blood-soaked, shivering mess as Jack's bubble form appeared above him with a cartoonish gasp of shock. "Wow! I haven't seen one of these bad boys since the siege on Baal's castle." "Good job, Michael. You're really proving me wrong. I thought you were going to die way sooner." Michael sputtered and shook as he fruitlessly tried to wipe the gore from himself. "Oh, fuck, Jesus Christ, Jack." Jack's bubble floated around to face Michael at eye level. "Only 3 of my lovely contestants remain. The final battle is steadily approaching. Aren't you excited, Michael? Maybe you'll win." Michael felt a chill run through his body. 3? There were only 3 people left? Him, Alexis, and 1 other of their acquaintances that got shoved into this game. Michael ignored Jack as he left the room to find new clothing. He found some Ren-fair-looking attire in a nearby room and used the blanket of a bed to clean off as best he could before getting dressed. Jack's bubble seemed to have popped away at some point after Michael had stopped responding to it. Michael opened his inbox as he saw another message from Alexis. He needed to send her a signal she could see from far away. Michael went back into the room containing the Hell Reaver, and he tried pushing it. To his surprise, he could budge it. It would take him a bit, but the castle had a courtyard not far from this room. If he could get a shot into the air, that might do the trick. After about 20 minutes of moving the heavy ballista, Michael stood in the gorgeous courtyard of the castle. Blue banners and green trees spread all around. In contrast, his disgusting hellgun looked even worse out here, the tendrils on it seeming to pulse with excitement. But at least only his shoes were covered in blood now. He opened his inbox. Michael, I'm sending the signal. I'll be in the middle of the castle in the courtyard. Chapter 9. Alexis stared at the red, crackling explosion of what looked like blood off in the distance, high in the sky. What kind of signal was that? Shaking herself free of the sight, Alexis started to head off in that direction, keeping a quick pace. Michael looked up and cursed as he realized the Hell Reaver's bolts seemed to produce their own blood-like substance when fired. No wonder there had been so much when he shot Daniel. Michael rushed to the back of the courtyard, his eyes in the sky as a crimson rain poured down over the beautiful trees and gardens. He managed to stay mostly out of the splash zone, but half of the courtyard was now drenched in a thin layer of gore. It was when he was staring at the mess of the Hell Reaver that he saw it, Alexis's name on his compass. There were only 3 people left, and he was now targeting Alexis, meaning, if he understood correctly, the third person was targeting him, and Alexis was targeting them. The blood rain had finished, but his mood did not improve. He immediately opened his inbox once he got a hold of his thoughts. Michael, Alexis, you're my new target. What do we do? There's only one other person left besides us. Alexis, stay calm. We'll figure this out. It's Emily. Michael, Emily? I don't know how much more of this I can take. We celebrated her birthday 2 weeks ago. Alexis, I know. Maybe we can convince her not to fight. If he kills us all, then his dumb game was for nothing. I'm willing to risk it at this point. I'm done. Michael, me too. I just turned Daniel into a pile of chunks. I don't even know who I am right now. Alexis, you're you, Michael. It's gonna take me a bit to get to you. If you have to fight Emily, don't hold back. Michael, I'll do my best to avoid that. Michael stayed in the courtyard, waiting, the Hell Reaver turning back into a broken wooden ballista as his upgrade wore off. All of his cooldowns had finished. He hadn't seen a trace of Emily yet, the haze weighing heavily in his mind, making him feel like he was being crushed. Daniel had been losing himself, but he didn't deserve what happened to him. Neither did Olivia or any of them. Michael was sunk down against the northern wall of the courtyard, eyes locked on the southern entrance. Alexis stood at the front steps of the castle, her eyes trailing along the huge mess of wine and splintered pieces of heavy barrels. She made her way up carefully but quickly. At the top she saw what Michael had meant, her hand covering her mouth as she saw what was left of Daniel. She didn't stop for very long, walking through the gore in the hallway to get to the courtyard. She didn't have time to waste. Emily was so nearby ahead of her. Maybe she was speaking with Michael, or maybe they were killing each other already and she was too late. Alexis ran into the courtyard in a panic, shouting out for Michael, only to be met with him sitting and staring up at her in shock from across the gardens. She stood in the grass that had been showered in blood and examined the space, but her compass made it clear Emily was ahead of them still, deeper in the castle. Michael stood and ran over to her, a slight fear in his tone. "You okay?" Alexis looked him up and down in his Ren Fair attire with flecks of blood scattered around him, his shoes completely soaked in it, before replying, "Are you?" He paused and then laughed a bit hysterically. "No." Alexis gave an understanding nod. She wasn't doing the best herself. She gripped his shoulder and gave him a reassuring look before pulling him into a deep hug. They stayed that way for a long while, her eyes plastered on Emily's icon ahead of them. When they split from each other, she said, "Emily is in the castle to the north. I don't think she's moved since my compass targeted her." "Do you think she's hiding? She's not what I would call a fighter," he said, composing himself. Alexis nodded a bit as she said, "That could be if Jack is allowing it." Jack's bubble floated from around her shoulder, joining the conversation. "Hiding is a plenty valid strategy. Sometimes you have to do it if you want to get the jump on someone, or stay safe." They both gave the orange bubble a disgusted glance before its grin widened, and it continued. "That being said, with only 3 people left, I do think the time for running and hiding is over. Maybe I should let her know." Just like that, the bubble popped away with barely a noise. Alexis looked distraught for a moment. Michael watched as her face morphed into fear just as quickly. She grabbed Michael's arm and shouted, "We have to go to Emily now. We can't let him hurt her or get in her head." Her tone was so strong, so confident that it left Michael speechless for a moment. Could she not see that they were all dead? There was no saving any of them. Michael took a deep gulp, swallowing his nerves and pain down as he made a decision. He would live in the delusion that they could win. He had to. It was his only hope. Without another word, he turned with Alexis and they ran through the northern courtyard entrance. Alexis guided them straight to the throne room in the deepest part of the castle. The heavy double doors creaked as they each took one and pushed. The bubble was over Emily's shoulder, whispering to her. Emily looked at them as the doors were pushed open enough for both her friends to slip through. Her voice came out in a shaking cry, "Stay away from me!" Michael felt an anger in his stomach boil up to his throat. "Don't listen to him. Whatever he's saying, it's bullshit." Alexis joined in on what Michael was saying, trying to convince Emily to calm down and listen. The poor woman was curled up in the corner behind the 2 thrones, clutching her tear-soaked face, a paintbrush in her left hand. The gray stone of the castle was surrounded by vibrant blue banners, the thrones trimmed with silver and gold adornments, blue fabric making up the seat. Jack's bubble spoke one more time into Emily's ear, and her eyes shot open with panic. Clutching the paintbrush against her hair so tightly a few strands snapped off, Emily shouted her ability to the world. Abstract! Nothing had made sense when Jack dragged them all to this place, but as Michael's eyes adjusted to all the new sights shifting in his vision, he was sure this place was hell. The world changed so fast. The gray of the stone darkened into an inky black that swallowed the room, all shapes and patterns becoming unrecognizable until they were all trapped inside a black void that was rapidly filling with swirling colors from the room, blues, golds, and silvers rippling through the air and floor in painful streaks. The fear and sadness in the room was palpable, a pressure that weighed on them all. Michael's eyes shot to the floor. It was like he was standing in the night sky, the void of space. He couldn't tell how deep it was, or how far it stretched around him. The walls and ceiling were gone, replaced with these colors that felt more like endless feelings than a physical space. And yet when he took a step forward, the ground was solid. Emily was still sobbing, but now it looked like she was curled up in the endless painting of this new world. She was muttering wordless under her breath now. Michael realized too late that she was muttering another ability. Around where he thought the thrones had been, from the inky abyss, rose a hulking humanoid mass of what could only be described as extra viscous paint. Its body was bulbous and devoid of features, its colors so similar to the new plane they found themselves on that it confused the brain to look at. Michael felt like the haze in his mind had been given form, consumed him. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but he wasn't controlling them. Alexis had them as well, a trick of this place. Emily looked up at them from her panicked position and spoke with the sudden ferocity of a cornered animal. I can't die. I can't. Alexis took a nervous step back with Michael as they watched the woman's skin morph, taking on the same paint-like color and texture of her summoned golem as she seemed to melt directly into the floor until she was just gone. Chapter 10. Jack hovered in the air, watching the swirly inky sphere that seemed to have grown right out of the castle. He touched the edge of the ability, and a feeling of wonder took him. He pushed hard on the edge of it, trying to get inside and watch the fight. His bubble couldn't manifest inside, so he was blind to them. To think one of them would have such a naturally strong ability. To think it would be meek little Emily. A rush of fear and excitement suddenly gripped Jack. Could Alexis win? He pushed against the sphere again with no luck. Some abilities messed with reality in small pockets like this, but this one was extra stubborn. With a deep, resigned sigh, Jack realized he would have to wait. The paint golem slammed a gloopy fist into the ground right as Alexis and Michael leaped to different sides of the beast. Michael had switched to battle mode the moment he saw the 12-foot creature form. Alexis called out, "Emily, we're not trying to kill you. We want to work together to stop the game." There was no response as the golem turned its round, featureless head toward Alexis. It swung its arm at her, the tree trunk-like appendage stretching out and growing thinner as it flung so far from the creature's body. Alexis tried to dodge backward, but the limb grew as thin as a rope, slamming into her and wrapping around her, pinning her arms to her sides. Alexis struggled in a panic as she couldn't break free of the limb. It began retracting toward the paint golem, dragging her along the ground in what felt like a bolas made of thick sludge. She called out to Michael for help. Michael's thoughts swelled quickly. He needed a weapon that could slash, and his only option was to craft one. He would have to flip to build mode for a moment, but he couldn't afford to stay in it for long. He would have to use craft and upgrade immediately. He didn't have time to examine it too closely. He could tell that thing was trying to absorb Alexis. In Michael's hand spawned a great sword. Not just any great sword. This was what some people would call an ultra great sword, or perhaps a buster sword. The giant hunk of metal could barely be called a sword. His upgrade ability shot through it almost as quickly as it had arranged itself. The giant hunk of iron took on a glowing blue blade, as if enchanted with magic, the color like a bright morning sky in the inky abyss. Michael stumbled forward, almost breaking his arm from holding the thing, before switching back into battle mode, his lance-like screwdriver now in his offhand. Michael threw his screwdriver with all his strength, the sharp end of the weapon slamming into the golem's back and causing it to shift forward a bit with a burbling noise of frustration. Michael had broken into a full sprint the moment after throwing the screwdriver, both hands gripping the hilt of his giant glowing weapon. With a leap through the air and a vertical slash, he let the weight of his new weapon guide him. His slash, arcing in a full circle straight through the golem's shoulder and severing the arm that was dragging Alexis. The beast let out a nasty roar sounding like someone pitched down a frog as its heavy limbs splattered to the floor. The rope-like paint around Alexis melted and left an acrylic pour pattern all over her clothes and arms. She was on her feet in an instant, weapon drawn, as Michael skidded across the ground from the momentum of his landing, stopping next to her as his hunk of glowing metal created sparks along the floor. Alexis was about to set up for an attack of her own when she saw something out of the corner of her eye. Emily. The frantic woman was forming out of what seemed to be thin air, her skin going from the paint texture back to normal. She saw Alexis catch her eyes and she began running away aimlessly. Alexis knew if she tried to go straight for Emily, the golem would get in her way. But how long did they have until Emily melted away again? Michael noticed and called over, "Go after her. I got this thing." Alexis trusted in Michael's confidence. He might have been the last thing she did trust. In a swift sprint, Alexis took off in Emily's direction. The golem swung a bulbous fist toward her, but Michael leaped in the way, blocking the strike on the flat of his oversized blade. He could see the tip of his screwdriver sticking out of the front of the golem's chest. The one-armed beast pushed its hand against the weapon, tendrils of inky black wrapping around it. Michael grew pale as he realized the thing was trying to absorb his weapon, and now, with a powerful suction-like grip on it, Michael couldn't create the momentum needed to slash his way free. He needed to abandon the sword, but Michael couldn't bring himself to toss his creation aside before examining it. Time was not on his side. Moonburst greatsword, angel-level relic. This relic had the innate ability Moonburst, casting a short wave of magic that was strong enough to harm lesser enemies and knock back larger foes. Cool down 1 minute. Alexis shoved her sword back in its scabbard before tackling Emily to the ground, pinning her and speaking quickly. "Emily, listen to me. I could have killed you just now. We don't want to hurt you. Just release that golem thing, and let's talk." Emily shivered and turned her head to face Alexis, who eased up on her slightly. "Jack will never let us end the game. He's just gonna make us fight again or kill us, or torture us." "Fuck Jack. We can band together and take him on. It's what we should have done the moment he killed Ethan. I'm not playing his game anymore. Fuck him and fuck heaven," she said bitterly. Emily grew quiet for a moment, the sound of Michael's battle with the golem filling the air around them. She spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Alexis. I don't think we can win. Paint form." Alexis felt nauseated as she watched Emily turn back into paint. At the same moment, a glowing blue light burst from behind her. The screwdriver inside the golem shot out and skittered across the floor as the lumbering beast stumbled backward, the tendrils coming from its bulbous hand, sizzling from the magic power. The stump where its arm had been slashed off was now slowly forming a new, smaller arm. Before it had a chance to counterattack, Michael stomped forward and swung his shining blade in a crescent slash, straight through the golem's knees, severing both legs at once with a shout of effort. Paint splattered across the floor behind it in a beautiful pattern before its body crashed to the ground on top of its melted legs. Michael, now far too close to the enraged paint golem, yelled out in pain as the beast's hand and sizzling tendrils slammed into his legs, the force feeling like it almost shattered his bones. Michael felt his flesh sink straight into the creature. Moving his legs became impossible under the pressure. Michael felt fear erupt through him as he realized how sore his arms were from that last swing. Even in his battle mode, this thing was a lot. Alexis realized as she felt the paint moving from under her. Emily wasn't going invisible like Ryan. She was turning into literal paint and camouflaging in the abstract environment. She quickly followed the paint as it surged away from her along the floor. She shouted into the void, "Emily, trust in us like we trust you. We're friends. I know you're scared, but we can do this." Out of the corner of her eye, Alexis saw Michael getting grappled by the paint beast. He was sinking into its arm, his lower half already absorbed, as he was weakly slashing at the legless golem's last arm. He wasn't mustering enough strength to cut it. He was worn out. Michael was dying. Alexis was currently the most agile and physically strongest of them all. But in this moment, seeing her best friend fruitlessly trying to save himself, she couldn't take seeing anyone else die, and her adrenaline spiked. Her foot slammed into the floor with force, powerful enough to shatter stone as she bolted across the abyss in a blur of motion. Michael had one arm raised, his other getting pulled into the golem now. He was about to bring the Moonburst greatsword down for another swing when Alexis caught his wrist so hard it felt like she might break it. Michael let out a pained cry, letting go of the hunk of metal. Alexis caught the Moonburst in both hands, twirled toward the writhing paint mass on the floor, and slashed through the center of it with a battle cry, loud enough to rattle a giant. Michael fell backward as the paint enveloping half his body melted into normal acrylic. With a disgusting burble of protest that was cut short, the giant golem exploded from the force, its remaining body spraying into the air before showering down as nothing more than droplets. Alexis was exhausted. She felt herself drop to her knees, breathing heavily. She could hear her heart beating in her ears. The sword banged heavily on the ground beside her as it fell from her hand. Michael watched her fall forward and roll to her side. She was breathing shallowly from overexertion. Michael stumbled to his feet out of the heavy paint and pushed through the thick liquid to get to her side. His voice came out uneven. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "Emily, she's over there. You have to convince her to work with us." Her voice was distant, and he could tell she was passing out. Michael's eyes scanned for where she was pointing. He saw it, a small mass of flat paint moving across the floor like a stingray. Michael dissipated his screwdriver across the room and respawned it into his hands. He might have been tired, with some very sore legs, but he couldn't let Alexis down. Emily started to take shape and form out of the paint once more, still just running away. Michael was able to catch up to her quickly. He was pretty sure her agility stat was mortal level. Emily turned and held her paintbrush out at him, knowing she couldn't get away. Michael gave an exasperated shout. "Emily, just stop! Stop running! Stop fighting! Just stop!" "We have no chance against him, Michael. She's delusional." Her voice shook. "We can at least try. Isn't it better to die fighting than to kill each other?" he said. "I already told you, Michael. I don't want to die." Her tone evened out as her eyes darted behind him for a split second. That one motion, that look, caused another rush of fear through him. He looked behind him to see Alexis, unconscious and struggling in a daze, as a piece of the golem, only the size of a football, had crawled out of the paint piles left behind and was now on her face, suffocating her. This was hell. The dark haze was all around him. The walls were made of it now. He had to move, and he was much closer to one target than the other. Emily grunted as she hit the floor, Michael's shoulder ramming her onto her back. His foot crashed down onto her stomach to hold her in place, his screwdriver raised above her with both hands. He heard her call out an ability for a brief moment. "Paint!" Michael slammed his screwdriver straight down through Emily's chest, piercing her heart and ending her ability before it left her throat. The painted world around him just seemed to pop out of existence, the same uncomfortable way Jack's bubble did. The paint, the golem, everything just blipped away like it had never been real. Michael looked down at Emily's body. That was real. The blood pooling under her painted the stone throne room floor red. Michael stumbled off of her and made his way to Alexis, collapsing to his knees next to her and checking her breathing. He pressed an ear to her chest and heard her heart beating, just to make sure. Michael scooped her up into his arms and just held her for a moment. He had failed her. They were the last two. They were broken and exhausted, and they were all they had against Jack. Michael picked Alexis up and walked back toward the courtyard. Chapter 11. Michael entered the courtyard carrying Alexis. The weight of the day was so heavy on his shoulders he felt like he could collapse, or maybe it was the injuries all adding up. Michael dropped to his knees in the front of the courtyard, his eyes scanning for any sign of Jack. Sure enough, the masked man in his friend's skin floated down from the clouds like a shining god. Jack's feet touched the ground softly, his burning eye like light in his mask focused intensely on Alexis. It flicked between her and Michael for a moment. He sounded shocked. "You beat Alexis? But she's still alive." Michael shook his head. "We didn't fight. I wouldn't fight my best friend." I saved her." They were both silent for a very long time as Jack seemed to get lost in thought. After a long, tense moment, a green magnifying glass icon appeared in front of Jack, and a copy of it appeared over both Michael's and Alexis's heads. Jack hummed to himself before saying, "Wow, she'll be all right, but you're messed up, Michael. I think that fight with Daniel scrambled your insides, and whatever you did in there made it worse." "Great." The bitter tone dripped with anger as Michael spoke. Michael's breath was coming in short, pained bursts now, as just like Alexis, his body had hit a hard limit. His eyes burned with hatred as they met the orange mask with a cracked smile. "You're a lunatic, Jack. Whatever happened to you in this place changed you for the worst." Jack held his hand in front of him, and an open book appeared in it, Nandra's Tool. He spoke a few words, and green wisps filled the air around Michael and Alexis. In the blink of an eye, Michael felt as good as he had when he woke up that morning, and Alexis began to stir in his arms. Alexis opened her eyes and looked up at Michael. "Huh? Michael, did you get Emily to help us?" Michael looked down at Alexis with pain in his eyes despite being healed. He shook his head somberly. Alexis grew a look of defeat as she shifted and stood up on her own. Jack's twisted smile hung over them both as they stood to face him. With a sigh, Jack slammed the book closed, and it vanished with the noise. Jack looked between them once more. "I don't think it would be right to end things so soon. You guys haven't even fought yet." Michael felt something in him snap at that moment. He charged Jack with a scream of rage, his screwdriver appearing straight into his hands in battle mode. Alexis felt her heart freeze as she saw the gleaming silver mace appear in Jack's hand. With a casual swipe, the blunt weapon slammed into the side of Michael's head, sending him flying into the stone wall with a crash. Jack started walking in his direction, the healing book reappearing in his hand. "Did you get a little too much energy there, Michael? Do you not know when you're beat? When to bend the knee?" Michael was slumped against the cracked wall, his head ringing. He was sure he was dying. Green wisps surrounded him and brought him back to good health. He looked at his own shaking hands. "Jack, you have to stop this." Jack tilted his head to the side. "Do I? My goals stretch far beyond this, Michael, so let me make myself clear." Michael's body rose into the air as Jack held his hand out, the book now floating above his head. Michael floated to be right in front of Jack. "Jack, please, there has to be another way. You're so powerful, you really can't figure out something better than this stupid game?" Jack clenched his fist, and Michael felt just as stunned as when Olivia first hit him with her camera ability. Jack's voice took on a deeper and less playful tone. "This book above my head belonged to my friend Nandra. She reminded me so much of you, Michael. I'd like you to feel what she experienced for her weakness." Alexis nervously took a step toward them. "Jack, please don't hurt him." A blazing inferno erupted in a perfectly contained cylinder around Michael, engulfing him in dark red demonic flames. He screamed in agony as his flesh cooked and his hair burned away in an instant. His clothes evaporated as his features became charred. The book above Jack began pulsing every few seconds with the green wisps, healing Michael to keep him alive in the blaze. Alexis's heart sank into her gut, her sword whipping out of its scabbard as she sprinted behind Jack with violent intent. Jack's mask turned to her with that inhuman smile. "You sure you want to kill me before I can fully heal Michael?" Alexis froze, not taking the strike, fear in her eyes. Michael's cries of agony had devolved quickly from croaks to a silent shiver of overwhelming suffering. The inferno stopped and dissipated into the heat haze. Michael hit the ground with a thud that sounded more like someone had dropped a bag of charcoal, limp and quiet. The book floated down to rest back in Jack's open hand. A flood of the green wisps enveloped the burnt body. Michael sat up with a scream of horror before grabbing at his face, his arms, and finally his hair. With a flick of a wrist from Jack, even his Ren Fair-like clothes returned. Jack turned his focus back to Alexis. There, now we can... Her sword slammed into his mask with so much force that Jack stumbled back a few feet and grunted. It hadn't cut through, but when Jack looked back at her, she could see the web of cracks running through the mask, starting from the forehead. It fell to pieces off his face, clattering to the ground. Jack gave a small shake of his head, his wild mane of black hair settling around his sharp features. That passive of yours really has some bite, doesn't it? His calm tone made the whole situation all the more frustrating. Alexis held her sword forward, pointing at him. This ends here. This stupid game was all a test or some kind of training, right? Then, I have a suggestion. Michael made his way to stand next to her, still trying to gather his thoughts, unable to speak. Jack watched him curiously before flicking his eyes back to Alexis. I'm listening. Me and Michael versus you. A 2v1. I think we're both capable enough, she said. Jack laughed. I would kill you both in an instant. Then limit yourself to 2 tools to make the fight fair, she snapped back. This made Jack pause before replying. I see. What would that accomplish for me? If we win, then you're clearly only strong because of all your fancy toys. If you win, then you can just take whoever you think did better in the fight to train for your little mission, she taunted. Jack felt as an emotion rose in him, one he hadn't felt for many years. An irritation spread through him as he gripped Luco's mace tighter. You're suggesting if I was in your shoes, I would lose? Alexis scoffed and twirled her sword. Just like you always do. Michael finally managed some words. Alexis, what are you doing? Jack got a wild look in his eyes, and his own mouth cracked into a vicious smile. He gripped Luco's mace, and Nandra's book vanished. I don't even need 2 tools, or any relics. I'll tear you both apart with just one. They both felt the shift in pressure in the air. He had brought himself down to their level. Alexis murmured over to Michael. I'm going to use my battle sense and fight him head-on. Try to use that quick thinking of yours to help me again, yeah? Michael wanted to say a dozen different things, but it just wasn't the time. He simply nodded with a short, yeah. Alexis activated her battle sense and charged the mace-wielding psycho. Their weapons clashed with a spray of sparks. Michael called his tool to his hand, checking his cooldowns. Whatever abilities Jack had used on him for the healing had also reset his abilities. Maybe he could craft another weapon, like the Hell Reaver, or the Moonburst Greatsword. Michael looked at the shattered pieces of Jack's mask. He wondered what would happen if he tried to repair it with craft. It might be the wrong decision, but he needed some kind of edge, a risk for a reward. Michael saw more sparks flying as the two were now shifting back and forth in a flurry of blows that was hard to follow in his current state. He took off toward the shards of the mask and gathered them in a pile before using his craft ability to try and mend it back together. It wasn't perfect, but it did resemble a mask again. With a nervous breath, he uttered his ability. Upgrade. The mask began rapidly changing, going from an orange face with a crimson grin to a deep blue color with pearly white spiked teeth stretched into a frown so deep it looked like a crescent moon. Mask of Suffering, angel-level relic. This mask allows the user to peer into the minds of those around them. You can also create up to 10 bubble echoes for long-range communication. Passive ability, no cooldown. Michael quickly shoved the mask to his face. It hugged tightly and stretched to fit him like it was melding with his skin, though it wasn't painful. Michael felt his jagged, pearly teeth almost stuck in the frown. He could sort of change the expression, but it took a lot of effort. His eyes, or actually his eye, similar to Jack's, was a cross-shaped hole in the mask that now held a bright white light he could see through, locked onto the battle again. Alexis and Jack were both drenched in sweat from the effort. Each of them had scrapes, bruises, and cuts already. Their strength and agility stats were clearly higher than Michael's. The white, glowing eye burned as it fixed on Jack. Michael used his new ability to peer into Jack's mind. It wasn't what he expected. Instead of hearing his thoughts, he could see strands of important memories and key moments in his life. Core memories. It seemed as if time was moving at a snail's pace, including Michael's body, but his mind was moving so quickly. He felt like he could look through every strand of memory like a casual day at the library. He began to pick through Jack's mind. Chapter 12. The fight against Baal and his army lasted only 5 years, but in that time, Jack had made 2 close friends. Luco and Nandra, the 3 had become as inseparable as Michael, Alexis, and Jack on Earth. They died gruesome deaths at the hands of Baal. They had approached the Demon Lord with overconfidence that only Jack could back up, and at the time even he couldn't win, so he ran. Michael floated through Jack's memories of the terrifying Demon King crushing Luco's skull and burning Nandra to a crisp as she fruitlessly healed herself. Michael touched his face, remembering the agony of that feeling. Nandra's healing book was what Jack had used to keep him alive while torturing him, but the tool was clearly much stronger with Jack than it had been with her. He could see the pain and fear on Jack's face. He looked so much more like himself. Michael followed these memories, finding himself watching Jack coldly recruiting more fighters to help him. It was easy to see he was keeping them all at a distance, only ever talking strategy and making plans to gather more tools for himself. They all died the same, in agony of some kind. Jack kept going. Every memory, every found relic, every gathered tool. He looked more and more jaded. Michael quickened his pace through death after death, until stopping on a memory that seemed different. Jack was sitting on a hill during a starry night next to another man, an older man who seemed to be some kind of tank-like warrior. "Jack, you have to let me do this," the older man said. "You're asking me to let you die, to let you take this burden all onto yourself." Jack sounded quiet and bitter. "You're young, Jack, and you've been through enough for Azure. This isn't even your home," the man said. "Fenris, this has to be my home. It's what the heavens decided. They told me it's my job to use this second life for the good of Azure, to save everyone and kill Baal. None of you can do this. It has to be me," Jack said. There was a long pause before Fenris spoke again. "My tool is unique, Jack. If you take it, you'll be a danger for the rest of your life." A small black orb formed in the man's hand. Michael sat across from them and examined the tool. It was a small black bomb the size of a baseball. Jack took the tool and nodded. "If I use it to kill Baal, I won't have to worry about that." Fenris looked somber as he said, "This is my duty, Jack." Jack replied firmly, "It won't be strong enough with you alone. With my buffing capabilities, it's a sure thing." Fenris put a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You're a hero, Jack. I won't stop you, but give it some time. There are still things to live for." Michael watched as Jack seemed to separate the tool from Fenris and absorb it. The older man looked pale afterward, like a part of him was missing now. The memory began to fade into the next strand, the starry night sky morphing into one of smoke and ash. Michael floated alongside Jack as his soldiers attacked Baal's castle years later. Michael could see the toll of countless painful decisions in his old friend's eyes. Fenris's bomb tool was clutched in his hand, his eyes darting between the castle and the sky. Michael saw some kind of decision wash over Jack as he dissipated the bomb tool and pulled out Luco's mace. Michael watched the final battle with Bale in awe, Jack zipping around the air like a hawk as he slammed the Demon Lord repeatedly with Luco's mace, dodging blazing streams of demonic fire. Fenris was impaled with a Hell Reaver bolt, crying out from the ground, "Why aren't you using it?" Fenris never got an answer as the jagged spikes of blood pierced through his skin, and just like Daniel, the older man was reduced to a slurry of gore. Jack caved in Bale's skull with Luco's mace, fittingly avenging his dead friend. Confusion clenched in Michael's stomach. Why did he take Fenris's tool? The few remaining soldiers that survived the siege of Bale's castle looked up at Jack. They seemed terrified. One of them shouted out, "Why? Why didn't you stick to the plan? Why did you take Commander Fenris's tool if you weren't going to honor him?" Jack floated above Bale's body, the moonlight spilling through the ash and smoke behind him as he shifted his gaze to them. With a finger pointed to the sky, Jack said, "Because Bale was a small fry. My real target is up there. The grand finale will have to wait." Michael felt a chill run through his body. Jack was barely stable, barely hanging on, and if he understood the timing of events correctly, this was around 55 years ago. Michael began speeding through memories, watching as Jack began gathering all the god relics, studying them, and seeming to plot his assault on heaven. Michael understood the plan more and more as he went through the years, or at least what the plan would have been. Jack never found a way into the heavens. When he finally thought he had, it was just a connection to Earth. He would never achieve his goal of using Fenris's bomb to destroy the heavens. He was just mad. Almost 60 years of planning his own glorious death had failed, even with all his power. This game, it was nothing more than a pathetic and broken suicide attempt, dragging Michael, Alexis, and everyone else down. And for what? Was it smart to look for meaning in the actions of an insane man? The frustration was too much to bear. The weight of the haze in Michael's mind felt like it could drag him to the bottom of the ocean. Jack hadn't deserved what happened to him, but neither did Michael or Alexis. Michael searched for meaning, for any sense that he could be wrong, but the more he looked, the more it all clicked into place. Jack had been hurt over and over again, torn from his world by a system that didn't care how much he suffered. And now he was dying with no purpose. He had been traveling this world alone after saving it, everyone afraid of the bomb inside him and his ramblings. When Jack began gathering the god relics to this kingdom, the people had evacuated it, leaving it all to him. He didn't care. He just kept to his path. Now Alexis was slamming her weapon against an unstable nuclear bomb, while Michael read the description on how it was made. Michael took a deep breath and went back, far back, into their shared memories from Earth. Michael watched him playing a simple fighting game with his best friends. He sat on the bed next to them and just relaxed. Jack laid back after the match and sighed. "You guys are so good at cool shit. I wish I was good at anything. I'm so tired of picking stuff up and dropping it a week later." The younger Michael in the memory turned and said, "Come on, man. You may not be as good as me at some fighting game, but you know way more stuff about random shit I've never touched. You're like an encyclopedia for that stuff." Jack leaned up on his elbows with an unamused expression. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Alexis laughed and hugged her arms around Jack's neck as she spoke. "Words are not something Michael's good at. That's my thing." "Hey," Michael said, annoyed. Jack laughed. "Well, what's my thing then?" Alexis hummed for a moment. "Being the best. You're always there when we need you." Michael nodded and smiled at him. Jack pushed her off of him playfully. "Shut up." The real Michael stood up. He felt tears in the corners of his eyes under the mask of suffering. In a nervous motion, Michael let go of the memory strand. Reality snapped back into place all around him. Chapter 13. Sparks flew between Jack and Alexis, her eyes bulging as she used battle sense to the fullest, keeping up with Jack while she could. They came together for another clash of metal when Michael cast all 10 of his blue bubbles between them, each one shouting, "Stop!" Jack and Alexis both backed away from each other as they popped all the communication bubbles. Jack turned to look at Michael, his eyes widening as he examined the mask of suffering. "What? You transformed it?" Blue wisps of energy were still dissipating around the two as Michael looked between them. "Just stop. Jack, I've seen everything you've done here. I know what this is." The man looked at Michael in silence for a moment, his crazed expression softening. Alexis took a cautious step to the side, nearing Michael. "What's going on?" Michael held a hand up, his face still hidden behind the mask as he continued. "Jack, are you still able to send us back to Earth?" Jack looked almost defeated as he couldn't seem to hold his gaze on Michael's white-hot glowing eye. He just shook his head no. He looked lost, confused almost. Michael felt like his stomach was doing flips, trying to defuse an impossible bomb, one made of his best friend. Michael steeled himself and walked forward straight toward the broken man. Alexis held a hand out. "Michael!" "Alexis, we're stuck here. I can help Jack, but I need you to run," Michael said. She stiffened. "When have I ever been the type to run?" Michael approached Jack with empty hands. "Jack, I understand what you went through. I'm here for you." He held his arms out slowly and continued. "You've been alone for too long. We're here." The dark haze in his mind was settled over all the memories he had walked through, dragging him into the abyss by his ankles as Jack watched him and took a cautious step forward. Alexis was watching in silence, not sure what Michael's plan was, or why Jack had such a sudden change. Alexis trusted Michael and walked forward with him. Jack let himself fall into his friend's embrace. They sat there quietly for a long while as Alexis watched them hold on to each other. Her voice shook a bit as she spoke. "Jack, are you in there?" Jack laughed softly. "I've been here the whole time, Alexis. I'm just not the same person I used to be. I don't have long left. I know I look the same, but without my fancy tools." Jack let his true self bleed through his illusions. His 80-year-old body curled against Michael now. He looked frail, despite still clearly being able to move the same. Physically, he was the same beast she had just been fighting, but his age was clear now. Alexis walked over and held his hand, looking at the weathered skin. She traced a thumb over the back of his hand. "You really have been here that long. It doesn't make any sense. I saw you die today." "I've been alone for over 50 years, and if I'm being honest, it's my fault. It's because I thought I could stop them. The ones who did this to me," Jack said. Michael rubbed his old friend's back. "Alexis, Jack has a—" A pressure settled heavily over everyone, stopping Michael's words instantly. Someone was floating over them all. Alexis let go of Jack and took a step back as she looked up. Jack looked transfixed. Michael slowly looked up at the being creating the weight on them. A man in a gray robe floated above them, long black hair draped around his shoulders. Unlike Jack, this man's hair was well kept and straight. He wore a white, faceless mask, and gripped in one hand was a giant metal scythe that resembled ivory. His voice was sleek and harsh, like the sharpening of a knife. "Jack, you have violated the laws of heaven. For that, you must face punishment." Alexis nervously found her voice. "What about us?" His faceless mask looked toward her. "You are fine, child, but you cannot leave this world. You have already been awakened. You will stay on this plane until you pass and achieve a greater awakening." Jack shook and started to grow a wide, crazed grin of excitement as he pushed away from Michael. You're here. Heaven's here. Michael stumbled a bit before catching himself and looking at the new figure. He still had plenty of time on his mask of suffering. Maybe he could. The moment he tried to use the relic on the heavenly man, it shattered off of his face with a slightly painful explosion. Michael grunted and rubbed at his face, cursing as the man pointed his scythe at him. I would not try anything like that again, my child. Now, Jack, if you wish to be given a greater awakening rather than having your dust scattered into the universe, I suggest you come quietly. Realization hit Jack's face, and his grin simmered into a calm expression. Of course. I must pay for my crime, after all. I know my place. The man shook his head and started weaving a hand pattern of some kind in the air. I swear, whoever assigns unstable weaklings like you to worlds like these is beyond me. Do you know how much repair we're going to have to do on that incubation world? Jack watched as a white, swirling portal of energy began to form in the air in front of him, golden wisps of light flicking off of it every now and then. So I'm going to some kind of heaven prison? The man finished crafting the portal before speaking. You will be taken to be reformed. Yes. Michael didn't know if he should say something about Fenris's bomb or not. He thought about all the horrors Jack had put him through. Then his mind drifted back to that conversation on the bed, back when everything had made sense. Whatever that bomb would do on the other side of that portal, Michael was sure it would be beyond bad. Jack was his best friend. He couldn't let him do any more evil. With a quick dash over, Michael said, Before you take Jack, could I have just one moment with him? Jack looked to Michael fondly. He was aware Michael knew his plan now. He knew Michael understood. He had to. The floating man aimed his scythe at them. One goodbye. Michael caught Alexis's eyes for a moment. She noticed the look. It was dark and heavy, almost apologetic. She couldn't bring herself to approach them. Michael turned and hugged Jack deeply. A tight embrace, as he said, I understand, Jack. I've seen what you want. The world was drowned out in the silence of Michael's dark haze. As he was patting Jack's back, he lifted his hand and formed his screwdriver in a reverse grip. The crunch of bone and tear of flesh rang out like a gunshot as Michael plunged the sharp end through Jack's back and into his heart. Jack's body stiffened and shook. Michael, why would you? The two fell to the ground, Michael gripping Jack tightly as he looked up frantically at the strange, powerful man. Close it. Don't let him through. Even with his face hidden behind the white mask, his shock was evident. But he saw it. He felt it. The built-up energy of a bomb that had been festering for a lifetime. As the glowing cracks started forming all around Jack, he viciously crawled with one arm, overpowering Michael's hold as he shoved toward the portal with Michael clinging to him, a trail of blood forming as they moved through the dirt. Alexis ran forward, shouting, Michael, get off of him! He'll kill you! The ivory scythe slammed down through the middle of the portal, dissipating it right in front of Jack's dying face. The man looked to Alexis and shouted, Stay back! I have to contain this! He held his free hand forward toward Jack and Michael, with a grunt of effort, a white and gold barrier forming around them tightly. Alexis stopped as Jack looked back at her with pain in his eyes. Alexis, I was never the best at anything. I couldn't save anything. She saw the glow through his skin flare behind his eyes. Michael gave her that stupid, apologetic look again. Run, he said. The strange man seemed to strain himself as a few more golden barriers appeared, these ones around him in the original, stopping just in front of Alexis. Run, my child. I do not know how much I can. Alexis turned and sprinted as fast as she could. confused tears rushing down her cheeks as the crashing sound of Fenris's bomb burst behind the barriers. A shattering sound ripped through the air, and a wave of heat and pressure threw her off her feet and across the courtyard. Alexis slammed into the wall so hard she heard a few things crack before she hit the ground in a daze. When Alexis came to, she stood up in the ash-covered courtyard. She slowly limped her way back to Michael, but he wasn't there. Jack and Michael's bodies were ash, next to the charred corpse of the man from heaven. The only thing left was the ivory scythe, laying pristinely next to his body. Alexis picked up the relic, with tears flooding from her. "Michael, you idiot. Why?" Using the scythe to help her walk, Alexis made her way out of the courtyard, alone. "Welcome, Michael. It seems you've gotten a head start on your awakening. For that reason, we'll be sending you to a slightly higher plane that needs some help. We appreciate your cooperation with heaven. You saved many lives with your past awakening. We wish you luck on your next journey. One day, you may find the path to heaven yourself." The androgynous voice spoke from all around Michael, floating through the darkness with no sight or feeling. He couldn't respond. The voice continued. "As a bonus for your greater awakening, we thought it would be fitting to remove the cooldowns on all your abilities. Please use this to the fullest in order to save the people of Castor." Michael sat up with a gasp of air, resting against a tree in the middle of a field. There were flowers all around him, and a stream cutting through that led toward a small village in the distance. Michael gripped his hands in the grass around him. He could still see the menu icon in his periphery. Michael fell back against the tree, staring up through the branches. The sky was a lovely shade of blue. He looked back to his hands, forming his screwdriver and staring at it. Michael let his hands drop and hit his head back on the tree again as he found his voice. Fuck. The end.